You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's time to wake up with the Morning Boys on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And here are your hosts, Ryan Hickey and Mark Kelly.
A very good Monday morning here, the first episode of the year here on the Morning Boys. We are without Ryan Hickey this morning as we're learning how to get into the morning grind here. Ryan is not with us. He has a situation in the family, but he will be back with us on Thursday. As the new year is going to start for us, as we will now be doing Mondays and Thursdays instead of Tuesdays and Fridays, which is what we normally were starting last year. But I am joined by Evan Mazza here, and he's going to take over for Ryan today. And so we got an interesting day to get to. A lot is going on in the sports world. So, Evan, looking at the NFL, we're going to start there, okay?
We have to.
Yeah, I mean,
what a wild card weekend it was.
Now, yesterday's games were, I think, not as – everybody's still kind of getting over the shock of Brady being knocked out, of the Patriots being – I mean, this is the first time since 2009 that they were not in a divisional round. And usually it's an annual right, the divisional round playoff game at Foxborough. So now they're done. And I think another question everybody had going into this postseason, and you saw the performances he had, like the last one he had on Monday Night Football. Everybody was basing Kirk Cousins' career and his ability to play in the big games that he was 0-9 on Monday Night Football. He always seemed to fail when the money was on the line. But we saw, finally, I mean, I would tell Ryan and I would talk about this. And Ryan's a guy that he kind of bought early on in the year, and he felt like he was like hoodwinked a little bit. But I think you saw yesterday kind of, sometimes it takes guys a little bit, Peyton Manning took a couple years before, I remember they lost 41-0 to the Jets in the playoffs.
Oh, that was Peyton's first playoff game against the Jets. They lost 41-0 to Chad Pennington and the Jets.
Yeah, that was his first playoff game against the Jets. Yeah, his first playoff game overall was against Tennessee, I think.
Right.
But you lose 41-0 to the Jets. I mean,
those are some good Jet teams, the Herm Edwards Jet teams. Those are some pretty good Jet teams.
Herm had some clock management issues.
He did.
Yeah.
Those are some good Jet teams.
I loved Herm, but I mean that was a lot of Parcells guys. That was like the golden era, I guess, of Jets football in my lifetime. But I think Cousins kind of had that where you looked at all the talent that was on the Vikings and you said, if something's going to break, it's going to break now. And the type of season they had early on in the season, there were some problems. He kind of made up with the locker room. He became like a leader in the locker room. Mm-hmm. And you saw yesterday when it looked like that things were falling apart. And starting with that turnover at the end of the game where he was ruled down.
Dalvin Cook's turnover, right?
Yeah, he did have his knee down. That would have given the Saints a lead. That's kind of when you think, it's starting, like, the final pieces are now in, and they're going to lose this game.
Well, that was the first drive with Adam Thielen. Mm-hmm. Thielen fumbles, like, the first drive of the game. Cousins throws to Thielen for a first down. Thielen fumbles the ball, and that's when you're thinking, oh, no, here we go again. Because a lot of us predicted for this game, the Saints-Vikings game, that the Saints were going to kind of walk all over the Vikings. That the Saints were going to blow them out. They were going to take care of business. They were 13-3 during the regular season. A dynamic offense, a good enough defense, a defense that did struggle at times, but still good enough. And we kind of thought they'd take care of business a bit and blow them out. But Minnesota was talented. We forget how talented of a team Minnesota is. But the question always was, can Kirk Cousins do it? Can the Vikings do it? Can Kirk Cousins put it together and pull off this big upset and beat Drew Brees, beat the Saints at home in the Superdome? And they right off the bat, when Thielen fumbles, you're thinking, "Oh no, here we go. Here we go. This is where the Saints are going to take. They're going to score. They're going to take this game over, and they're going to beat them by halftime." But the Vikings defense, led by a great front, a great defensive line, was able to just settle down, get after Drew Brees, sacked him on third down, was able to hold no field goal, and hold the damage a bit. Mm-hmm. And that was a key turning point. And we saw that in Wild Card Weekend. 2 teams on the road against Hall of Fame quarterbacks, one dynamic offense. The Patriots offense I can't say is dynamic, but still Hall of Fame quarterbacks hold them in the red zone, which turned the game around. Turned both games around for the road teams to win.
Yeah, and I think that, especially with the Vikings, everybody was kind of looking for that moment when Cousins were going to take the game into their own hands. And, you mentioned that first fumble. I was referring to more like when the game was starting to fall apart
Dalvin
in the fourth
Cook,
quarter.
Right, yeah.
And it looked like that the Saints had recovered the fumble and ran it back for a touchdown, and they reversed it, which obviously his knee was down. But I remember watching that as I was getting ready. One of my friends sadly passed away over the weekend, so that's why I didn't get to see the second game. But as I was watching the end of that first game, I'm thinking to myself, here it comes. Here's that moment. And then obviously it was karma that it wasn't meant to be because the play was reversed. And then even though the Saints got the ball back and then wound up tying the game, the drive in overtime, that was one of those drives like that. Kind of like the Russell Wilson to Baldwin to win the championship game in Green Bay, that type of drive, and it was almost like the same type of pass where you got him down on the 1 yard line, and then they have 2 running plays that set him up for third and goal. And you're like, oh my gosh, are they not going to score here?
And they lose yards on
second
down.
Exactly, and then Rudolph makes you don't really see too many tight ends able to catch a fade. Maybe Gronk is the only guy I would think that could do that.
Tony Gonzalez, Jimmy Graham in his prime with the Saints.
Right, we're talking about Hall of Fame tight ends, and that's what winds up winning for them. And I think, do you think we could see a run from the Vikings here, like the Red Sox kind of like once they get over the hump? Because the Vikings have not been to the Super Bowl since they lost to the Raiders in Super Bowl 11. They were in 4 of the first 11, and they have not been there since.
The Bud Grant years. And they've gotten close, obviously, 98 with the Falcons, that infamous one. Yeah. That infamous one, 98. Obviously, in 2009 with Brett Favre and the Vikings, they got close.
Yep.
Obviously, that was also going to say. Boy, the Saints and Vikings in recent memory are really they're really tallying themselves some playoff resume against each other, huh? 2009, the whole the Bounty Gate stuff that happened, Brett Favre's interception.
Right.
2 years ago, the Minneapolis Miracle, and now this big upset yesterday. They're really piling themselves a pretty interesting rivalry.
That's right.
But I think for Minnesota, they are as talented as a team as any team in the NFC. The NFC is loaded. Like the AFC, you look at the playoffs. We entered that AFC playoffs of, the Ravens and Chiefs are kind of the class. Yeah, we won't count on New England. New England's sitting there. New England's waiting. They're that beast.
You had to.
Of course you can.
Until they're dead.
We can't.
You think they're going to rise up.
Yeah, they're the reigning defending champs. They've done it 6 times. They've been to 9 Super Bowls. They've been to 13 AFC title games, 8 in a row. You can't look at the Patriots and say, forget them.
Yeah.
With the Texans, it's like, we'll see. The Bills, okay, they're not there, but they're getting there. The Titans are not there, but they're getting there. In the NFC, it's anybody. Green Bay, New Orleans, San Francisco, Minnesota, Philadelphia. I can't really say Philadelphia, but Seattle. It was pretty much every team in the NFC other than really Philadelphia. You look at and said, they could go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
they could be there. Minnesota is one of those teams. Kirk Cousins or no Kirk Cousins, they are one of those teams. Kirk is one of those quarterbacks who had to prove it.
Absolutely.
He had to show. And my golly, he did. He did. We can't. And
for 1 week he did. Yeah.
For 1 week he did. But boy, it was a big week because in the Superdome against Drew Brees, against the Saints team that we talked a lot about the Patriots and the clock ticking and everything for them, and maybe the dynasty is over again. We have no idea what's going to happen with Tom Brady in free agency. It's kind of the same thing with the Saints, though. It was kind of the same with the Saints. Drew Brees is 40 years old. Sean Payton has coached there for a long time. There, of course, been the everlasting rumors of maybe him going to Dallas. I don't know. Drew Brees is 41 years old. He's not getting any younger. He's still playing at a high level, but again, the clock is ticking. When is the Saints era coming to an end? They'll probably have another crack at it next year, but their run's coming to an end. Very much like New England is. So how many chances are the Saints going to get? How many chances are the Saints going to get to win a championship and to get that second title with Drew Brees and Sean Payton? And that's another thing that I saw brought up yesterday after the Saints game. We talked a lot about Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers and how many championships they won or lack of championships they won together. It is now the same with Sean Payton and Drew Brees, isn't it? I think it is now.
They've only won one, and I think most of the time people think, they've been so successful, obviously, because you see all the passing records that Drew Brees has. Since he came in 2006, we're talking a whole new franchise, kind of like what with the Patriots. Except the Patriots
yeah.
win Super Bowls, but everybody who remembers the Patriots back before they became, the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick Patriots, the Patriots were about as generic as an organization as you could be.
Mm-hmm.
And they just developed into this powerhouse. Now, I think with the Saints, because they haven't won as much, it's a little bit different. And when you're, Drew Brees' career, this year, Winston passed for 5,000 yards, becoming the 9th player to do so. Okay.
Winston had the most odd year of any
right,
quarterback in the NFL.
Exactly. Right. 30 touchdowns, 30 picks, but he's passed for 5,000 yards. Only 9 quarterbacks have done that. Drew Brees has done that 4 times himself. Okay.
Right.
So he's rewritten the record books. And going into the postseason, you're looking at teams that could win. You're right. You have the Eagles. They've won a Super Bowl. Okay. Saints have won a Super Bowl. You have the Niners. This is a new Niners team. The Niners team with Harbaugh were knew they were going to be in the, they were in the NFC Championship game a couple times. They were in Super Bowl one time. This is a totally different group, but you're used to seeing the Niners kind of, in the last 10 years or so, be one of the final teams for a little bit. The Seahawks, they should have had 2 Super Bowls in their pocket.
They should have.
But they've won 1, and Russell Wilson is a guy that has proven himself in the postseason. And then you have Green Bay, which I think Green Bay, their best year, they did not make it to the Super Bowl when they were 15-1.
2011,
and
lost to the Giants.
The 2010 year, when they were just ravaged with injuries, they do make it to the postseason. The only thing we're missing kind of in this quandary is the Falcons. But they're kind of
they had their
about
opportunity.
Yeah,
they had it. They had their opportunity. Their window closed. I think their window closed that Super Bowl day. I know that's kind of odd to say, considering Matt Ryan won MVP and they were in the Super Bowl. But when you're up 20-3 in the third quarter and you got that game pretty much in the bag and you blow it, and considering how long Matt Ryan has now been with the Falcons, your window kind of closed there. And I think the window closed there for the Falcons.
So looking ahead now, we have the Niners taking on the Vikings. Okay, in itself. Well, anytime I think of the Niners and Vikings, I don't know how old you are. I kind of outdate myself.
You think of the Joe Montana?
I think of and one specifically, they played at 3 straight years: 87, 88, and 89.
They did, yeah.
And in 87, 13-2, this was a strike year. The Niners were back. They had lost in 86 to the Giants, 45-3,
right,
or something in the playoffs, and Jim Burt knocked out Joe Montana at the Meadowlands. Giants wound up winning the Super Bowl that year.
Right.
And then 13-2 in 87. That's when Jerry Rice set the receiving record, with 22 touchdowns in a 15-game season. And Montana had one of his best statistical years, and they easily were the best team in the NFC. The second best team in the NFC were the Saints, who made the playoffs for the first time in their history under Jim Moore, and they were 11-4. And the Vikings went in there and a wild card beat them easily. I think like 44-17. They wound up beating New Orleans in New Orleans' first ever playoff game. Then they went to San Francisco and beat the Niners, and that was the game that Bill Walsh took out Joe Montana at halftime, and he brought in Steve Young, and they still couldn't beat the Vikings. Just jumped on him early. Anthony Carter, I think, had a huge game. He had like 220 yards, and the Vikings wound up beating them, going to the championship game, losing to the Redskins, who wound up beating the Broncos in Super Bowl. Doug Williams' first Super Bowl,
right,
or only Super Bowl. That's what I think of. And then in 88 and 89, the Vikings got them back, and they blew them out, I think, at both games at Candlestick. So now that's kind of history, I think, of with the 49ers and Vikings. Totally different groups now, obviously. The Vikings now have a lot of bad playoff memories in a recent past. The blowout. I mean, you have the win against the Saints a couple of years ago, the miracle in Minneapolis, but then you also have getting blown out in the championship game.
Right.
You have in 2000 getting blown out at the Meadowlands, 41-0, I think was that
by the
final.
Giants. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Jason Sehorn returning a kick or an interception for a touchdown. That was Dante Culpepper and Randy Moss.
That was 2000. I think that was Cunningham.
That was Culpepper.
That was Culpepper. Okay.
Yeah. 2000 because Culpepper was there. Cunningham was there 97 and 98. 98 to 15 once even, obviously. And then he kind of had his problems in 99. That's when they went with Culpepper. But that was like the cover athlete of. He was like the first Cam Newton, Dante Culpepper.
Oh yeah, no, he was really good for a couple of years. He was right up there with McNabb and McNair and Brady and Drew and Vic and everything. Like Culpepper was really good.
He was.
Culpepper was pretty good. Fortunately, injuries kind of hurt him in 2005, and he kind of went around to Detroit and Miami. I remember in 2006.
Yep.
That was, of course, the infamous decision with Miami. They
Yep.
went with Culpepper over Drew Brees,
That's right.
and the rest is history. And it's not a shot at Dante Culpepper, but just again how things happen.
How things just happen. Yeah.
Culpepper was up there with those great quarterbacks at the time. He really
was. But he was kind of the first big quarterback who can run and he could throw, and he had a couple of years of really putting up staggering numbers with Randy Moss and Chris Carter and those guys. And so I think that's kind of what the Vikings have recent history. Like we mentioned their early history, 4 Super Bowls, the first 11,
right.
And then they've nothing, and they have barely made it, memorable for Vikings fans, other than painful memories. You're thinking of like the missed field goal, Blair Walsh, a couple years ago against the Seahawks, obviously getting blown out against the Eagles. We talked about the game against the Giants. So this is kind of like a way to historically reinvigorate everybody, and also for Cousins to kind of make that statement claim, kind of like. In sports, that's what happens. Like the Capitals for years stunk in the playoffs. It blew 3-1 leads. Every time you thought they win a President's Trophy, they would fail, and then they come out in a year you don't expect them, and they win the Stanley Cup.
Win the Stanley Cup, right.
Same thing with the Blues. The Blues perennial playoff failures last year, winning the Stanley Cup.
Right. Well, they were in last. I mean, the Blues were in last place back in January.
Yep.
They were in last place in January. At this point in time last year. The Boston Red Sox in 2004. No one saw that coming. The Nationals, of course, this year. Obviously, the Nationals this year.
Right.
No one saw that coming. Nobody did. So, the hottest team. If we're talking about the Minnesota Vikings being the hot team to make a run at the Super Bowl and taking this win with the Saints and upsetting the Saints and going to the Super Bowl, is it possible? Of course it is. I think it's certainly possible because they are as talented of a team and as good of a team as there is in the conference. So of course they could go. And we have to also think about this. San Francisco is pretty inexperienced.
Right.
Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't quarterbacked a playoff game. Patriots, obviously, he was a backup. Kyle Shanahan has offensive coordinator in Super Bowls, but he hasn't head coached the Super Bowl. They have a lot of guys in there. Richard Sherman, obviously, is the lone exception, and Emmanuel Sanders are the 2 lone exceptions. But other than that, most of their players, Joe Staley is really one of the only few players left from that Super Bowl team in 2012. But most of that team is inexperienced, haven't been there. Coaching-wise, he has not head coached the team to a Super Bowl. This will be his first playoff game.
Right.
Garoppolo's playing his first playoff game. Cousins just won his first playoff game on Sunday. This is a Niners team that is now coming off a first-round bye, has home field advantage, and we do see a lot of teams like San Francisco handle first-round byes and handle home field advantage and so on, and come out slow in the playoff game. They come out slow, and it affects them. They end up losing. So I'm really curious to see how San Francisco comes out in this game. If they come out a little slow, Minnesota takes an early lead. Then you're thinking to yourself, okay, now Minnesota's got control. But if San Francisco comes out red hot and they take an early lead, then San Francisco, I think, pulls away and wins this game. Because San Francisco has been the best team in the NFC all year long. You can make a case the best team in the NFL along with Baltimore. So if we're thinking Minnesota has a chance to make a run here, it goes a long way if they can go into San Francisco and beat the Niners, especially a Niners team that isn't as experienced and doesn't have the playoff experience and is playing that first-round bye kind of lull that sometimes we see teams have.
Right.
So
and you can see them falling into that trap, much like you can see the Ravens kind of falling into that trap.
I think the one thing with Baltimore that saves them is John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh has been there before. He's had a first round bye one time actually, 2011. He's had that first round bye. He knows what it is. Obviously, he's won a Super Bowl. I think John Harbaugh kind of levels that playing field. I understand. I think that's a fair point with the Ravens, especially since it is still a young football team.
It's a fair point with the quarterback, probably.
Sure.
But you're right. A lot of everybody else has got experience.
Right. But I think John Harbaugh kind of levels that because he's been there. So.
And I think that one point you mentioned is usually you're used to seeing the Ravens on the road. And even starting with Joe Flacco. I know Flacco for a long time had the most road playoff wins for any quarterback because they had so many chances to win road playoff games. So now they are the hunted instead of being the hunter.
Yeah, it's very unfamiliar territory with the Ravens, and it's interesting now. Here comes Tennessee as the divisional playoff. They've had 2 matchups. This is now round 3 for them in the AFC divisional playoff, both previous 2 times, the Ravens were the underdogs. The Ravens were the ones coming in Tennessee. The Ravens were the ones kind of the plucky underdogs that no one saw coming. Tennessee were the 2 favorites. They had strong running games with Eddie George and Chris Johnson and Steve McNair in 2000. 2008 was Kerry Collins. Strong defenses all led by Jeff Fisher. Teams that won 12, 13 games. Baltimore came in and upset them. Now the shoe's on the other foot.
Because in 2000, that was the year after they won the Super Bowl, or been to the Super Bowl, Tennessee. And then in 2008, they were undefeated for a while. Tennessee,
and
the Jets, I think, beat them. The first team to beat them. So and they were the number 1 seed. So they are, and the only times Tennessee kind of you had this period of the AFC for so long has been dominated by New England, and it was like who was going to be the victim to go up to Foxborough and get their butt kicked in the second round, or in the divisional playoff. The last time the playoffs lost the divisional playoff was to the Jets in 2010. They've been in the AFC Championship game every year for the last, since 2011. So you're not used to them not being there. So the questions that remain, you have that Tennessee. I don't think most people figured Tennessee would be part of the equation on the second playoff Sunday in the NFL playoff. I thought that they thought the Patriots would figure it out like they always have, and they didn't.
They never did.
So now you have the Chiefs playing a home game, which for a while was their problem. They got over that a little bit last year by winning the divisional round, but then losing to the Patriots in the championship game. So we'll see if they've kind of learned from those lessons. They were awful. They lost 6 straight home playoff games at one point. The Chiefs. So maybe there's that lingering question about whether they're good enough to win in the playoffs.
That's a question I want to pose to you, and I think a lot of us now, with New England out. And the fact that Baltimore, we didn't really see Baltimore coming. No one saw 14-2 coming. I mean, no one saw 14-2 coming. Even if you had the Ravens going to the playoffs, no one saw 14-2 home field advantage coming. The Ravens could lose on Saturday night. I don't think they will, but they could lose on Saturday night. And you'd be like, okay, you know what? They had a great year. Right. Their window is wide open. They'll be back. Houston, we're still on the edge of. I feel like we're still trying to figure out whether Houston's a legit Super Bowl contender or not. Now that New England's out, do you think the pressure? I think the pressure now is fully on Kansas City to get to the Super Bowl to represent the AFC. Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes, those guys. Now that New England's out of the way,
right?
The full pressure is now on the Kansas City Chiefs to really get to the Super Bowl and win it all. They could beat Baltimore. They've done it. They beat Baltimore twice. They could beat Houston. Houston did beat them in KC. That's an interesting thing to look at. Houston beat the Chiefs in Kansas City earlier this season.
But that was without Mahomes, all right?
Or no, I believe Pat Mahomes.
Did he just come? Was he just come back?
I think that was like his first game back from the injury. I believe. You know what? I want to double check that, but I believe that was his first game back from the injury. But yeah, the Chiefs could certainly beat Houston. I think the full pressure now is on Kansas City to go in there to go and represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. Now that New England's out, I believe.
Well, I think too that Kansas City, because they got so close last year, people are thinking, well, if this isn't the season for them, I don't know. Yeah, Mahomes, he did play that game.
He did, okay.
So that was his first game back. So,
right.
But that was like the Chiefs for a couple weeks. They lost a couple home games that they were in to the end. There's a couple with them without Mahomes. But it took them – the Chiefs kind of rounded into who they want to be. Like right now they are kind of – this is where we wanted to be at the right time. The playoffs are starting. They got the bye because the Dolphins beat the Patriots. So that was kind of like the first – rock that kind of had to be knocked out of the wall.
Right.
And now they're getting a playoff game against the Houston, which doesn't have much of a postseason resume either as a franchise. They have a playoff resume with Houston. Houston's playoff resume is kind of lingered in heartbreak, right? I mean, that's why when they went up 16-0 when they were down 16-0 against Buffalo, I was watching the game and I was thinking, here we go again with the Texans. Last year they were down 21-0 to the Colts at home. The Texans' only playoff wins since they started this run in 2011 with Kubiak and Matt Schaub and those guys, Andre Johnson. They started this run in 2011. Their only playoff wins before Saturday was Cincinnati twice, and we know their playoff history. Right. And a Raiders team without Derek Carr because Derek Carr got hurt. Right. That's their only playoff wins. Other than that, losses to the Ravens, losses to the Colts, their division rivals, losses to, of course, to New England. They had to really – and Buffalo was going to be back. Buffalo was really good. But Houston had to fight back and scrap their way to a playoff win on Saturday in overtime. And we know their playoff history. Their playoff history is rocky. And for a team that's been as talented as them,
for a long time, and I know they haven't had Deshaun Watson until recently. Their playoff resume isn't as strong, and I thought the goal for them this year is to at least get to the AFC title game. I think that was their goal. I think that's their goal this year. So, but again, now Kansas City stands in their way, and Kansas City is ready and willing to get to a Super Bowl. They have to get there after last year. They have to.
Yeah, I think when the season started, most people thought Kansas City was going to be the odds-on favorite to get to the Super Bowl. And as the season progressed, Baltimore obviously replaced them as the best team in the AFC.
Yeah.
And it was that stretch where they just kept beating good teams by a lot of points. You saw when they beat the Patriots, it was okay. Well, we'll see if they're this good. Then they wound up beating the Rams. They wound up beating the Seahawks. Every team they played, they beat the Niners. Every team they played, they beat in their run after they struggled a little early on in the season.
Yeah, around the table.
Yeah, so now at 14-2, and they haven't lost since losing to the Browns.
Yeah.
So. And I mean, just think of that. The Browns who were 6-10 and underachieved, wound up firing their coach.
Both teams went completely opposite directions after that game. Completely opposite directions. It's insane.
So now the Ravens, like I said, there is a bit of, I guess, maybe insecurity for me watching the Ravens, because anytime the Ravens have an edge up where they play home games or they're the team that
is the favorite.
Is the favorite. Like I'm thinking of 2006 when they had McNair for that 1 year, awesome. And then Peyton Manning came in there. It was all field goals.
Adam Vinatieri kicked 5 field goals.
Yeah.
I remember that. I watched that game. I was heartbroken. Mm-hmm. That was the 06 Ravens team was as good of a Ravens team as they've ever fielded. Mm-hmm. Them, 2011, and obviously now this year, 3 best Ravens teams I think we can say we've ever seen. And that 06 team lost because Vinatieri kicked 5 field goals, and they lost 15-6. 2 bad turnovers in the red zone offense. They did really well against Peyton Manning. Just no offense. It really was. It was a shame. It stinks, too, because that team was so good. They were so good.
Yeah. and I mean, most of the time with Ed Reed and Ray Lewis and that defense, you figured they were going to figure it out. They were used to being the road team in the playoffs. They were used to going in there and, making their presence be known. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know if they were going to ever get that second title, but they wind up doing that because they figured out how to go into New England and win. They should have won the year before, where they were heartbroken. But this Ravens team is totally different. They're offensive base. Now Flacco had his moments, like where he went 11 touchdowns, no picks in 2012. So now with Lamar Jackson, it's a more wide open offense, obviously, and it's harder to prepare for. That's where I think the unknown factor with the Ravens can be so effective. Because even if you do everything right. Now, the only guy I figured would have some sort of genius plan to break down the Ravens would be Belichick. Mm-hmm. Okay? I don't know. Andy Reid, for as great of a coach as he is, I don't know if he can do that defensively to figure that out.
Now, he has done a good job twice now. These last 2 years, he has faced Lamar Jackson, and he has done really well against this offense overall. So now, of course, Andy Reid come playoff time is an entirely different animal.
Exactly.
We all know Andy Reid playoff time is not Andy Reid regular season. Questionable decisions, passing when you really should be running, clock management, which has always been big with Andy Reid. It's been a case for him for all of his 20-year coaching career. Clock management. Now, of course, he has to get by Houston. If it's Ravens-Chiefs AFC Championship game in Baltimore, I think the biggest thing for the Ravens is stopping Pat Mahomes, because Pat Mahomes has lit them up. His 2 times they faced him, he's lit them up. I think the key for the Ravens, now we're getting a week ahead. The key for the Ravens is stopping Pat Mahomes. That's really the key. That's really the key.
Well, we'll see. I think we come back off a break. We're going to talk a little bit about a little more about the NFC and what this means for the Niners, what this means for Green Bay, because of all the teams that do not have a second Super Bowl, I think Aaron Rodgers is probably up there as far as people think he is ready for or should have another one.
Right.
And this may be the best case for Aaron Rodgers to get a second one. So we're going to come back in a couple minutes and talk more about the NFC here on the Morning Boys you are listening to on Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. You're listening to the Morning Boys on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Here, as we got off to a little bit of a rough start here at Worldwide Sports Radio Network, but we are back on. This is our first show of the Morning Boys. Ryan Hickey is not here this morning. He's taking care of some family business, but he will be back on Thursday. We have Evan Mazza filling in, and it's my pleasure to have him here. And we got off to a start here earlier talking about the NFL playoffs, obviously, because this is the time of year to do that. And I think most of us are kind of worried now that have relied on college football and pro football for so long. We haven't really gotten into the college basketball, NBA type. I think the NBA has been going on for a while, but college basketball kind of really hasn't really sunk in yet. So we're still in the NFL, college football. The national championship game is on next Monday. But before we get to that, we're going to continue with the NFL here. Evan, I think one of the big questions coming off, obviously, is what is Brady going to do? I mean, that's not a real shocker as far as obvious things to talk about. But looking at the Patriots' numbers and how they fell apart kind of in the second half of the season to the first half of the season,
right.
Now, obviously, that had a lot to do with the type of teams they played. But even so, I mean, the Patriots, early on in the season, people were saying about their defense how it was so like Belichick-like. I mean, they were dominant. They were scoring. They were creating turnovers, making Brady's life a little bit easier. They won their first 8 games. Their first loss was to Baltimore. But in those first 8 games, they outscored. They were winning their games by an average of 23.6 points per game. That was their average margin of beating a team. So they won the first 8 games by an average of 23.6 points per game. They were outgaining their opponents by almost 137 yards per game in their first 8 games. And their turnovers were plus 17 over the first 8. Then the second 9, which includes a playoff game, 4 and 5, they were outscored by 1 point, okay? And their turnover differential was only plus 3. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of that is because of the schedule got a little bit harder, but it's also because I think maybe they were showing a little bit of weaknesses. And maybe that the cracks that we saw in those first 8 games that were not many, especially on defense, kind of came back. And when they had to answer those questions this year, all the years past, they were able to. They were able to answer the bell. They were able, anytime they had a game like Kansas City on Monday night a couple years ago where they got blown out, they were always able to answer back. In the playoffs, they were always able to, they've been to, this would have been their fourth, and trying for their 4th straight Super Bowl. They would have tied the Bills.
4th Super Bowl appearance, yeah.
Yeah.
Ninth AFC title game appearance.
Yeah.
That would have been crazy.
So this is their rite of passage, and now it's gone. Does this mean that Brady shouldn't be back? Does this mean that Belichick should leave? I mean,
Belichick, they said, wants to coach for like 5 more years. I saw a report that said he wants to coach for 5 more years. Mm-hmm. Tom, as far as the Patriots' season is concerned, we were waiting for this stretch that they went. They started off 8-0, finished the season 4-4. And they lost to Baltimore. They lost to the top 3 teams in the AFC: Baltimore, Kansas City, Houston. And not only did they get beat, they got beat pretty bad. KC was a bit of a game. The KC was a game, but Kansas City pulled away in the end. We were waiting for them to turn on, myself included. And I said on the Haystack numerous times, I said, I need to see in the playoffs. And I think we all had that feeling. Deep down, even if we were doubting New England, said, yeah, they're done. We were all waiting for. We said, let's just see in the postseason. Let's see the playoffs. Let's see the playoffs. Because that was in the end, that's New England. I mean, last year they stunk to close the season out. Playoffs happened, won the Super Bowl. There have been 2014. They were 2-2. We all said, oh, they're done. That's it. Brady's done. Move to Garoppolo. They go on a run, win the Super Bowl, right? 2016, even down 20-3, we're thinking, okay, we have a new team. The Falcons are going to win it all. It's their year. Come back, they win the Super Bowl in overtime. We were all waiting for. We were just waiting for it to happen. We were just waiting for it. Let's see the playoffs. Postseason happened. They got run over by Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry had a fantastic game, and I think that was something with the Patriots defense that I think Baltimore kind of exposed. They could be vulnerable against the run. And we saw that against the Ravens. We saw it other times this week. We even saw it against Cleveland in a win against Cleveland where Nick Chubb had some lanes to run in. He had a very good game. And we saw that yesterday, our Saturday night. Derrick Henry and the Titans' offensive line just out-physicaled, and kind of manhandled New England.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something New England has struggled with in the past. They've struggled with physical football teams with strong offensive lines who get after the quarterback, and Tennessee and run the football effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And Tennessee was just that kind of team. Tannehill only threw for 74 passing yards, threw a pick, and we kind of figured, okay, Tannehill made some big throws in the end, but he only threw 74 yards passing. This was a game where it was run the football and play great defense, and that's how Tennessee won the football game. And I think New England's also, I think Josh McDaniels' play calling in the second half was pretty bad. They got away from the run game. They got away from running the football, which I thought they were doing effectively. I think they got a little too screen happy in the second half. They succeeded a couple times in the screen game, kind of got a little too screen happy. As far as Tom Brady is concerned, I think he's back with the Patriots. I think he is. It doesn't surprise me he's not going to retire. I don't think he wants to retire after this loss. In the end, I do think he's back with the Patriots. I don't think there's any team in the league that would take a 42-year-old quarterback like Tom Brady other than the Patriots. You know, I mean, at least I think, Mark.
I think when you look at the fact that the Patriots, Derrick Henry ran all over them, okay?
Yeah.
And going into that game, I think people were worried at what we saw toward the end of the season, okay? I think, for me, it reminded me a lot of, like, remember 2015, the Patriots had a chance to clinch home field advantage and wound up losing their final two games. Their last game, they lost to the Jets in overtime, then they lost at Miami. That cost them home field advantage. Then they had to go to Denver, and Peyton Manning beat them in a game where, you know, I think they had given Peyton Manning, like, every opportunity to clinch that game. He could not get a first down, and then Brady finally, the last drive, took it down, scored a touchdown, but then the two-point conversion, the Broncos knocked down, and then they went to the Super Bowl. Well, that prevented New England from getting home field advantage. So that was an important game against the Dolphins that they lost, that if they won, it would have changed their playoff outlook. Okay, so you've seen them kind of do that at the end of the year. This was totally different, I guess, because it was at home, so you felt like, you know, what are we really seeing here? And then you saw a little bit of the same thing, the inconsistency on offense, the ability to put the ball into the red zone. So what are the issues that they're going to face that they think that they can make better for next year? Is it getting more wide receivers? Is it getting deeper threats? Is it getting Brady more time? Is it bringing in a running back that can take a lot of the load off? Are they going to stick with him until, I mean, right now they don't have a replacement. They didn't groom anybody.
Jarrett Stidham's their backup. That's their backup. Jarrett Stidham is their backup. So there's only really one home for Tom Brady, and that's New England. There's only one home. That's it.
It would just be so weird. Like, I'm 45, so I don't remember. Way before Johnny Unitas. But when he went to the Chargers, that was kind of like, people don't really remember Johnny Unitas playing with the Chargers, but he did. People don't really remember Joe Namath playing with the Rams. You know, those watching a Monday Night Football game where he threw like 3 picks, like he did. Mm-hmm. You know, and we're talking about. Brady is, it's big. We forget how big Unitas was back in the day. I mean, I think Unitas still holds the record for consecutive games with a touchdown pass. I think he has like 47, holds the record for.
Did Drew Brees break it? He might have broken it.
Okay, he might have been the only guy who could have, but I know he held it for a long time. I got to look that up, but
I'm pretty sure. I think Drew Brees broke it.
But Unitas was great, for his era and the things that he was limited to. I mean, people forget that wide receivers didn't always have to, weren't able to run free in the secondary like they are now. Back when he was passing the ball, the restrictions were a lot tighter on quarterbacks. And you could, knock a guy all the way down the field, and so it was a lot harder to complete passes. But I think Brady, in this era, Brady's been obviously the best quarterback by far. He's broken just about every type of expectation that we had, and he. Up until this time, we have not seen time catch up to him. And this was the first hint of that. Now, I'm not saying it's because usually with the Patriots, even though they've lost now, I mean, they've lost in the playoffs before. Their loss in 2009 to the Ravens was bad, 33-14, and you look bad that game. Right. The loss in 2010 to the Jets was bad. Right. Okay? But then they came back, and then they went on this long run, all right? Do you think that this is something that will motivate them? Like, I'm part in the back of my head is like, you know what, Brady's going to go that much harder. If whatever he can get out of his body, even if he has to put himself in some sort of like tank where he keeps his body like in ideal, perfect condition until opening day next year.
Right.
Kind of like Larry Bird used to be in like traction in the off days. Like, Brady will be in like this thing that he goes into that'll like heal his body and make his body like perform at optimum level. When he's not playing in the games. So maybe that's I don't know, but I still think that this would be a very, very bitter pill for them to end their run on.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think he wants to end his career on a pick six.
No. Although, some people thought that was done on purpose.
Right, oh yeah, because Tony Romo. I remember Tony Romo saying that how it was a good thing that it happened because the Patriots had another opportunity. Still, though, I mean, 15 seconds. Granted, no quarterback was going to do that. 15 seconds, no timeouts, down at the 1 yard line. No quarterback was going to make that comeback. But Tom Brady's not going to want to end his career on a pick six. Nobody. But having said that, I don't think Tom Brady wants to end his career like this at all, where people think he's done, where people think he's washed, people think it's over. I think he wants to go out on top, and it kind of goes back to where I saw last year. I don't know if you had the same feeling, but when they won the Super Bowl last year, that was 6, right? That was 6 Super Bowl titles that tied Tom Brady for the most Super Bowls ever by any player in the NFL. The highest, I believe, was Charles Haley, or I might have broken Charles Haley's record.
Haley had 5, yeah.
Haley had 5. So I broke Charles Haley's record. He had 6 Super Bowl championships, 9 Super Bowl appearances, another Super Bowl. Julian Edelman won Super Bowl MVP. Brady won a couple of Super Bowl MVPs, I think 3 or 4. Like, we kind of watched that. I think we all kind of saw that and said, okay, if Tom Brady were to retire right there, like that'd be it, right? Brady can retire there, goes on top, because we always see the legendary player quarterbacks kind of go out, not where we want them to go, right? Not everyone has a Jerome Bettis, Ray Lewis, Michael Strahan kind of ending, John Elway kind of ending where you're holding the Lombardi Trophy. Usually it's Brett Favre. Usually it's Joe Namath. Usually it's Johnny Unitas. Usually it's, Peyton Manning. Yeah, Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl in his final season, but he was terrible that year. We forget how bad Peyton Manning was that year. He was benched for Brock Osweiler. Lest we not forget, Peyton Manning was once benched for Brock Osweiler. Yeah. Lest we not forget. So we never want to see legends go out like that, especially someone like Tom Brady, who, in my personal opinion, is the greatest of all time. So we're hoping that next year you don't want Brady to go out. It's 1 year too late.
Yeah,
it's 1 year too late. But I think Tom Brady's just too motivated, too ticked off to go out like this. I think Brady wants to play next year. He's made that very clear after his press conference that he said he's pretty unlikely to retire. Is that with New England? I think so. Mm-hmm. I think so. What other team is fit for him at 42, 43 years old?
What if he would want him? I mean,
right?
Okay, like you could have. Who would turn down Tom Brady? It's kind of like the girl showing up at your door, like Miss USA and asking to marry you.
But would it make any sense that the Chargers, who are, by the way, letting go of a 37-year-old quarterback to bring in a 42-year-old quarterback? No.
I don't know. I mean, are you asking me, are the Chargers like on the cusp of winning? No. Mm-hmm. I mean, what has been their biggest downfall? You could say it's Rivers. In some cases, Rivers been their best attribute. So you don't know. He was like a total enigma, just like the whole Chargers organization is an enigma.
Right.
You don't know what you're going to get. I think anybody that was going to bring in Brady has to be a team that the only thing that they're clearly missing is a quarterback, and you cannot ask him to pass for 4,000 yards. You have to bring him in like with a Ravens type of offense that can run and throw for the equal amount of yards. The Ravens are the only team ever to rush for 3,000, throw for 3,000 in the same year.
Right.
So that really doesn't exist in the NFL today. I can't think of who would you, if you're a team out there, who would want Brady come in where they would give up their maybe Chicago?
That's the only team. But even then, Chicago's really the only team. But even then, why would Tom Brady want to go to Chicago where it's going to be freezing? Where at 42, 43 years old, it's going to be freezing cold. It's going to be bitter. It's going to be bitter cold. And yeah, he's played in Foxborough, but Chicago is a different animal, And he's going to go to Green Bay, again. That's freezing cold. The NFC is a lot tougher than the AFC. If you're Tom Brady at 42, 43 years old, why would you want to go to Chicago and say to yourself, "Oh yeah, Chicago's got a better football team. Maybe they're more set to make a run at the Super Bowl." I had them in the Super Bowl this year. Mm-hmm. They certainly are, but why would you want to say, okay, let me go to Chicago where it's going to get bitter cold, where it kind of will work to my disadvantage. At least in New England, I'm used to it. Chicago, it's going to be much worse. And I've seen some people suggest the Indianapolis Colts. I can't see him going to Indy at all.
I don't know. They probably blew him off the field.
That's 15. Yeah. That's a 15-year rivalry he was a part of. And, of course,
like him going to the Jets. I mean, first of all, that would never happen because Darnold was there. But, it'd be hard for me to see any team that has a quarterback that, unless their guy is just not the answer, they are so clearly lacking in that. I don't know if the answer for you is someone who's only going to play another couple of years, and you don't really know at what level he's going to play at. But a couple of things jump off the table here about Brady. It's 41st playoff game. Okay, this is the first time since his first 2 playoff games that he threw back-to-back games without a touchdown pass.
Right.
When you consider in the Super Bowl last year.
Right.
So I think that's something you got to consider. Is we're starting to see a little chinks in the armor. So when we come back, we'll talk more about that. We'll get into the NFC. We Tyler Ferguson here is going to join us for a little while as we continue.
The legend himself.
Yes, the legend Tyler Ferguson as we continue here on the Morning Boys.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. You're listening to the Morning Boys on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Cult of personality. Nice. 11 color. Very good.
When you give me the freedom for music like this, this is what you get.
There you go. Here we go. So we're back here at the Morning Boys on this Monday morning. We have Tyler Harrison here joining us.
Hello.
For a little segment here. So, Tyler, you watched the games this weekend. Now, I people tell me you're a Saints fan, so it's pretty hard on you.
Go.
So, what was your take on the Vikings and Kirk Cousins, and what do you think that their future holds for this postseason?
Let's just get this out of the way. I don't want to hear that the NFC and AFC are even comparable. Like that, the fact that a 5 and 6 seed in Seattle and Minnesota, both not upset, but dominated that football game on the road. You can't tell me that the AFC would have done that. Not the 5 and 6 seeds in this AFC would have went into the NFC's house and did that. Not happening. But to answer your question immediately, I think Minnesota is. I don't know really how to say it.
Show a little bit there, Tyler. I mean, it's a little emotional time.
It's not even 24 hours, but Evan texted me, and I figured that's what it was. But I do want to say the Vikings deserved to win yesterday, and I know a lot of people are complaining about that pass interference call. Was it pass interference? Yes. Do I think they should have called it? No, I don't. I don't think you call that little. It wasn't like he didn't throw the cornerback on the ground and make it obvious. That was just a battle of hand position, and he won.
Pretty much what it was.
That's how I look at that. Kyle Rudolph is a top-end tight end in this league for a reason. Mm-hmm. That was Kyle Rudolph's. He is a red zone guy. That's where the ball was going. I said all year the Saints lack 2 things, a second corner and a second wide receiver, and they both bit him in the ass yesterday. Mm-hmm. Alvin Kamara never really seemed involved. I think the Vikings have a really, really tough second round. I do. I don't think San Francisco or Green Bay would lose.
Okay.
Where are they going anyway?
They're going to San Francisco.
Yeah, no. They had a great shot against Green Bay. I do think I actually take back what I just said. I don't know why I said Green Bay. To me, is the weakest division winner that we had, which is ironic because the Saints lost their game at home. But I don't. Aaron Rodgers has never looked elite to me in this offense with Matt LaFleur. He just hasn't. I don't know if it's me. I don't trust Green Bay. I don't trust them at all. I do think they'll win against the no, I think Seattle will upset them too, actually. I think San Francisco and Seattle is your NFC Championship game, to be honest.
Okay. Now, getting back to the Saints here, okay. You look at one thing you could say is their second straight home loss in a playoff game. One thing we could say about Drew Brees and company is usually when they play in the Dome, they light people up.
Well, yeah.
You know, going back to 2011, I thought the Giants got the break of a lifetime that they did not have to go down to the Dome and play them in a championship game.
I agree.
They got to go to San Francisco. And, you know, totally different team. They had destroyed the Giants during the regular season in
Toughest
2011.
place to play in the league.
Yeah. So do you think that this is something that now with Brees, he's 40 years old, even though he had a good year, didn't play
Yes.
much, but, you know, 29-30 on a Monday night. Do you think that he is maybe starting to show his age a little bit, or is there something to worry about, or is this just kind of like one of those things where the Saints just didn't come to play?
I do think that the Saints dropped the ball as a team. The pass rush of the Vikings was in Drew Brees' lap the entire game. I don't care who you are, Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, Roger Staubach, Johnny Unitas, Joe Montana. It doesn't matter. If you're not comfortable in the pocket, you're having a rough day at the office. I will say this, though. Drew Brees didn't play great, but when the fourth quarter came to play and the Saints needed a big drive, that's what they gave him. Drew Brees is the reason that game went to overtime in my eyes. Mm-hmm. That and the defense. So, am I concerned? No, I'm not. But I also do want to mention this. If you don't think Drew Brees is a big game quarterback, I want to know what you're smoking, because did he play bad? Yes. Is he a big game quarterback? Yes, he is. I don't know what else to say. He's gotten a couple of rough trips.
Right.
And
you can say that for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, Peyton Manning had a lot of stinkers at home, losing to the Colts, losing to the Steelers, losing to the Chargers. You know,
blew out the Jets.
Exactly, losing to the Dolphins,
the Patriots numerous times.
Yeah, exactly. Even Brady. Brady lost to Mark Sanchez at home.
Yeah,
you know?
that's
Joe Flacco
twice
at home. You know, so
but see, that's my point. Joe Flacco is a great postseason quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean,
well, one that's used to winning on the road.
Right. And I think if you can win on the road in this league, it is something that even if you're average, if you can find, like Ryan Tannehill. I don't care what anyone. Ryan Tannehill is about to be paid in the offseason. Mm-hmm. I think he's the starter for the Titans going forward. I don't know how you.
That will be interesting, because you're going to pay a guy in Ryan Tannehill starting quarterback money to be essentially hoping that he's just okay.
Well, also,
is he really afraid?
He's top 5 in the league since he started in Tennessee for all stats.
No, he's been pretty darn good. He's been pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Is he a legit franchise quarterback? I still got my reservations about that with Tannehill, despite how great he's been for Tennessee. You have to be. I think if you're Tennessee, you got to be 1,000% sure that he's your franchise quarterback. You got to be 1,000% sure, because we got some good quarterbacks come out in these drafts in the next couple of years, and that's a Titan team that if they can get it right with their franchise quarterback, they can go far. They could make a run of the Super Bowl.
I think he's a good fit. I mean, 74 yards, fewest for any quarterback to win a playoff
Did make
game.
some big throws later on the end of the game.
But yeah,
against the best defense in football,
but also
in a very hostile crowd.
They are. Derrick Henry is their
bread and butter.
Yeah, is what they've built their team on. Okay, and we're talking about Derrick Henry, Heisman Trophy winner, first Heisman Trophy winner to win a rushing title since Barry Sanders.
Oh, that's a long time.
So from the University of Alabama, Roll Tide.
Really, that is a long time.
Yeah. So I mean, just throwing it out there. But anyway, you see it with Drew Brees winning on the road in playoffs. Brees has one road playoff win, I think. Was at Seattle, I believe, or
no, I think we lost that one. That's the game that Beast Mode started.
Yeah, I know he has one road playoff win in his career. Dan Marino, one road playoff win in his career, and that was the last one he played up in Seattle in '99. Right. Okay, a lot of these quarterbacks don't. Brady doesn't have as many road wins because you're always at home.
Right,
so you got to consider that too. But Mark Sanchez has 4 road playoff wins, so that could be a little bit of a misleading statistic.
Yeah, that's definitely a misleading stat.
But
right.
It is harder to win on the road in the playoffs. You got to have all these other factors going for you. But you did say something interesting that I want to hold you to account for.
Uh-oh.
You said that the AFC wouldn't see a 5 and 6 seed going in and winning. Well, you almost did, because Buffalo went to overtime.
I actually thought Buffalo was going to win that football game.
So,
I picked them to win it before the game even started.
I did so too.
I agree. Like, the NFC has the overall better teams.
They're the better conference.
Yeah, without a doubt, the better conference. Although the AFC, I think Baltimore probably gives matchup problems more than anybody else. The Chiefs can too. I think they use Mahomes a little bit differently, But I think either one of them would be a hard opponent for anybody in the NFC. But you look at now the divisional round games. We mentioned that San Francisco and Minnesota. I was telling him about the history of San Francisco, Minnesota, going back to Montana and when they lost in 87, and they beat them 88 and 89 when they won back-to-back Super Bowls. Vikings had not been to a Super Bowl since Super Bowl 11.
So that's a long time.
Yeah, I mean, they were for their first 11, and they haven't been back there since. And then you have, in the other matchup, you have Green Bay. Now, I think we were talking about the second quarterback to not, or one of the quarterbacks of these Breeze and Rodgers guys to not win two. And Rodgers is one of those guys.
Yes.
And you've seen in 2011, 15-1, losing the divisional round to the Giants. You're losing in that championship game in Seattle that they had won.
Right.
They absolutely had won. That game should have been locked down. Okay.
Yes. The game he got bailed out against Dallas, where Des Bryant made the catch.
Right.
And they said no
well,
catch.
yeah. There you go. I mean, there are a lot of things that you could say that maybe Rodgers has, as good as he's been, has kind of not answered the bell for a second title. Peyton did, even though his second title was barely his. I mean, he played awful, but
Me and
still
you could
got
have
it.
quarterbacked
Right.
that team.
But he
right.
still got it. Do you think that Rodgers, that's something that's going to bother Rodgers? Is this the best chance for him to do it?
I mean, the team is definitely there. That defense is the best defense I can remember him having ever with the pass rush. And Jair Alexander is quietly one of the best corners in football. We talk about Peterson, and we talk about Ramsey, and we talk about Stephon Gilmore, Tre'Davious White. Like, these are the names you mentioned, but Jair Alexander goes up against Minnesota twice a year. The Bears don't have an offense whatsoever, so it's kind of easy to forget they're even in the division.
Mm-hmm.
But he does take on everyone's top receiver. And I do like Kevin King, and I do really like that kid they drafted. I'm trying to think of his name. Jesus. Savage. Savage, I like Savage a lot. And to be quite honest with you, I put this token on Aaron Rodgers. You didn't want Mike McCarthy there. You wanted somebody that was going to let you do what you wanted to do when you wanted to do it. Okay, insert Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur is not going to tell you what to do. Matt LaFleur doesn't have the stroke to do that. So, to me right now, you wanted the keys to the castle. They gave it to you. Mm-hmm. If you don't win this, if you do not win this game on Saturday or Sunday, whatever it is, I don't know if the schedule has been released yet.
I think the game is on Saturday.
If you don't win this game on Saturday, I don't want to hear this conversation about him anymore being this elite quarterback. Because if you can't win this football game,
check that's on Sunday.
That is completely on you. And I'm going to hold him accountable. And you're going up against, to me, the MVP of football. And if Russell Wilson does what I think Russell Wilson's going to do, you're not winning that football game.
Well, I think with Russell Wilson, you saw that maybe in the second half of the season, he struggled a little bit more than he did in the first half. He was absolutely dynamite first half of the season.
No, he slowed down, and it's ironic because the first half for Russell Wilson and the second half for Lamar Jackson, I think, outweigh each other.
Mm-hmm.
So
point.
I don't really know who the favorite would be to win MVP. I personally think the league is going to give it to Lamar Jackson just because he's the upstart and he's the more exciting guy, and Russell Wilson's kind of forgotten about. But I do think Russell Wilson deserves it more just as a quarterback per se, and he doesn't have the offensive line. I think his offensive line is like 29th in football. Mm-hmm. To do what Russell Wilson did this year with that is amazing. He made DK Metcalf, a guy that everyone said, I don't know if he's got the route running ability. I don't know if he can do this, blah, blah. DK Metcalf, you can make an argument, should win Rookie of the Year offensively. So I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to have a tough time on Sunday? Yeah, I do. And Russell Wilson can tuck it and run just like anybody else. So I would venture to say that it's going to be a tough day on Sunday for Aaron Rodgers.
I think the second half for Russell Wilson from the year, if we're going to talk about Russell's performance down the stretch of the year, I think it is a big factor of him having an offensive line that isn't as strong, not having kind of flip flops at kind of a interesting dynamic at wide receiver because you had Josh Gordon
for like two snaps
for like a couple of games. After that, Unfortunately, he got suspended again, so he's out of the picture again. So you really have DK Metcalf. You're still throwing to Tyler Lockett. Now you have all this. You have this carousel going on at running back, which caused you to pick up Marshawn Lynch, who a week and a half before you signed him was literally selling tequilas at an Oakland Raider game.
Yeah.
So at the Raider final home game in Oakland. So,
but he was the X factor for them. I mean,
which
that's
is
the
crazy.
craziest part.
Which is crazy. I mean, Marshawn Lynch is just an incredible talent. I can't. It's incredible. It's incredible. And I'm actually happy he's back with the Seattle Seahawks. I would have hated to see his career not end with the Seahawks, but I think that's kind of the difference with Russell Wilson, what he's been able to accomplish this year, and why Seattle kind of did falter a bit down the stretch, and why they didn't end up with the number 1 seed. But Seattle, what's so odd about Seattle, they're a much better road team than they are a home team.
Yes.
That's so weird. So maybe it's a good thing that they didn't get home field advantage in the number 1 seed, because they're so good on the road. So they can go on the road against Philadelphia, beat them. They can go on the road against Green Bay. I think this is the worst possible matchup for the Packers, to get Seattle coming to town in Lambeau Field. I think it's the worst possible matchup for them.
I think Green Bay was definitely wishing that Minnesota would come there. Absolutely. I agree with you.
7-1 on the road this year. The only loss was to the Rams. Okay, it's funny they started 4-0 on the road, or actually 6-0, and they started on the road this year. Okay, the only other year they started 4-0 was 1980. They started 4-0 on the road, and those were their only 4 road wins, only 4 wins of the year, 4-12 in 1980. I couldn't believe that.
That's insane.
They win their first 4 games, and they finished 4-12. That was the Jim Zorn, Seattle Seahawks back then when they played at the Kingdom. But I think
Largent?
What's that?
I don't think Largent was there, right?
Yeah, Largent was there. Yeah, obviously.
Was he
Largent, yeah. That was before, in the early 80s, they had a run. They made it to the championship game, wound up losing to the Raiders in 83 when the Raiders won beat the Redskins.
That's
in the
crazy.
Redskins' second of 2 Super Bowls. That Marcus Allen got the MVP. But, they were like the up-and-coming team in the early 80s back in Seattle. So
The Boz.
the Boz. Boz wasn't part of
The
that.
Boz.
No, wasn't part of that.
No, I love saying his name, though. It's awesome. The Boz.
Those were the Dave Craig years. I remember Dave Craig getting sacked by Derek Thomas 8 times in a game.
Right.
And the final sack he didn't get led to the game-winning touchdown.
Right.
But anyway,
Derek Thomas was so good.
he was. We actually had his son on a couple weeks ago.
Oh, that's right. You did. You're right. You told me about that. Right.
Yeah, and he talked about his dad and everything, and yeah, it was great. Derek Thomas, one of my favorite all-time players from the University of Alabama, of course. Back when they had linebackers.
Roll Tide, yeah.
Well,
no, they've had a pretty good string of linebackers since.
Well, I mean, that was like Cornelius Bennett, Keith McCants wasn't anything, but he was good at Alabama.
Right.
And Thomas was the greatest linebacker I've seen in college. He's single. I saw him play against Tennessee one year. Single-handedly beat them. I mean, he was so dominant. He was so clearly the best player on the field.
Like Jalen Smith at Notre Dame, the year that I thought he could have won the Heisman when he blew out his ACL and PCL in the was it Fiesta Bowl?
Yeah, I mean,
he was their best player. I think he was the best player in the country at that point.
I mean, Alabama, they were overall a stronger defense then too. I mean, Thomas is just part of a great defense.
Right.
But he was like, you saw Taylor in the NFL. Taylor just changed the position, and you had to design things to stop him. Thomas was like that in college, and then going into the pros, he kind of developed into that, where he became this probably one of the best pass rushers in league history outside of Taylor.
I would definitely say that's a fair point to be made.
Yeah, but all right. Getting back to, I could talk about Derek Thomas all day, but getting back to the playoffs.
You can. It's your show.
Yeah. Well, that we'll have to take that on another day. So, and plus talk about Alabama. I could talk about that all day, and what Tua's going to do, and if they're not going to come back. I don't know if you're getting off topic a little bit.
Real quick, can I ask you? I know I'm not really
His
supposed to. His
decision is today, right, Tua?
Is it?
Yeah,
I believe his decision.
Yeah,
is
he's
today.
having a press conference with Saban.
Oh, here we actually. This is interesting. I'm reading here. He's apparently he's going to announce he's leaving for the draft.
Oh, really?
That's a mistake. He's going to regret that one. But now I've heard a lot about this dynasty being over. So I'm not going to get back to New England at all. But
with
do
Alabama?
you think Bama's done?
Heck no, they are. They have the second best recruiting class coming in.
Mac Jones looks like the real deal. Mac Jones.
Mac Jones looks better than Tua.
I don't know if
I like
he's
Mac
better than Tua.
Jones
I don't know if he's
better
better
than
than
Tua.
Tua. I don't know if he's better than Tua, but
No.
he looks really good.
I
have
think
confidence
Mac
in him.
Jones will be better than Tua.
Plus, they still have Tua's brother. They have one of the best quarterbacks in high school coming in this
Right.
year. So
He's probably going to give Mac Jones a run for his money.
But if I was Tua, I would come back. I actually thought he was going to be the first of many to come back, and they were going to take another crack at it.
Right. I think he should come back.
I think he should too, because you don't know what he's going to be in the NFL right now. The teams can't evaluate him enough. Somebody will take a waiver on him.
Right.
But
He's a first-round draft, I think.
well, talent-wise, yeah. I mean, but he has to show the ability to stay healthy. He hasn't shown that. I always thought, like, he won the national championship his first year there. The last 2 years, Alabama was incredible when he was on the field. They beat teams by like a video game margin. And then I think this year you could say Alabama was still one of the best 4 teams, but that loss at Auburn eliminated them. They just couldn't be part of the playoff after losing that game.
No, absolutely. I agree.
So you couldn't, and they self-destructed in that game. I mean, Mac Jones almost should have put up 60 on him. You know, when you think about that, he threw 2 pick sixes and he threw a pick at the goal line, and they had a penalty touchdown call back because of the penalty.
Right.
So all that stuff that happened in that game, but they weren't, and they, it looks like they'll have to move on without Tua.
Yeah,
but
his press conference is this today at 11 o'clock in the morning. It's still expected he's going to announce for the draft. I'd be a little surprised. I'd be surprised if he were to go back to Alabama. I think the right decision is to go to the NFL draft. Is to get again.
But
His value is, I think, even with the injury, his value is still pretty high. He will still get it. He
Pretty
will still
high.
Be picked.
But listen,
He will still get picked at a high rate because teams are so desperate for quarterbacks.
But just look at how the turnover was. He was supposed to be the number 1 pick. Tank for Tua was real. Mm-hmm. And now Joe Burrow is the consensus number 1 draft pick, right? Like, no one's not going to take Joe Burrow at 1 now. So you got Joe Burrow.
That happens. I mean, we all thought the Browns was stink for Sam Darnold. Then Baker Mayfield really popped up and he became the number 1 overall draft pick, and Sam Darnold kind of had an up and down last season at USC. We all thought, for a lot of other players, I mean, last year it was, okay, Justin Herbert's going to come out of the NFL. He's going to be,
right.
And then he went back, and then we said, okay, we don't really know who's number one pick. Oh, Kyler Murray comes out. He's going to play football. So it changes. It always changes.
And honestly, after Herbert's bowl game, you could argue he's going to go before Tua too. I would take Herbert before I took Tua.
I like Justin Herbert a lot. I would say Herbert may be the most. I've said it before. He may be the most pro-ready quarterback in this draft. Maybe even higher than Joe Burrow still. So,
I think if Tua goes back to Bama for another year of knowledge, he would benefit.
I think it would benefit too, because you think, what's the biggest question about him?
Well,
His
injury and
is the injury problem.
consistency.
Well, I mean, consistency, he usually plays well, but you've seen in games where he's played elite competition that he has had his biggest struggle.
Right.
You can talk about how he played against Clemson in the championship game last year, but also you have to remember that he came into the national championship game 3 years ago against Georgia and turned that whole game around. So, he has shown the ability to be dominant, but the last 2 years, his getting injured at the end of the season kind of changed all of their plans for, if you're Alabama, to win the national championship last year where they lost, and they're not even making the playoff this year. Right. So, to me, there seems to be a little bit of unfinished business, but you saw Jerry Jeudy. He announced that he was leaving, and Xavier McKinney, the defensive back, announced he was leaving. So maybe this is the start of the domino starting to fall. There's still a lot of other players. I mean, they have as many as 8 players projected to be drafted in the first round. The record is 6 by Miami in 2004. So
that was a good draft.
Yeah.
That was that draft.
Just that alone is something to marvel at. But I don't know. It's going to be hard if you're an NFL team to invest in a first-round pick, like a high first-round pick, on a guy you will not see perform until after you draft him.
Right.
And I think because of another player from that state that had a hip problem, in Bo Jackson, there's going to be that worry. Now, obviously, totally different. Bo Jackson did not have the treatment that Tua did. He didn't have the blood flow and everything, where his hip was supposed to make a 100% heel return. But Tua, a lot of it is his athleticism that he relies on. This kind of new age quarterback, that Lamar Jackson is, that Mahomes is, that Deshaun Watson is. So a lot of these quarterbacks, as we get on in the playoffs, that you're going to see, and that now that's kind of what the NFL is turning into. But getting back to the NFC now, so you have San Francisco and you have Minnesota, and then you have Green Bay, and you have
Seattle.
Okay. Now is this payback for Green Bay? A little bit. You think they're still pissed off?
They should be.
I
think Seattle's still going to win the football game, though.
Okay.
I think Russell Wilson and that defense. I saw that defense. Bobby Wagner is the best middle linebacker in football, right? I don't even know.
He's the fastest still.
I mean, I don't. If you want to say Luke Kuechly, he's fine. But if it's Luke Kuechly, it ain't by much. And then you got those corners always seem to just elevate their play in the playoffs. I don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. I couldn't tell you why they elevate their play in the playoffs. But every year, Seattle's corners go from average or above average to lockdown. I do not know how they're going to cover Devontae Adams, but I can assure you it's going to work. I think that Ziggy Ansah and Jadeveon Clowney are going to be in Aaron Rodgers' lap all day long. And like we said before with Breeze, if Aaron Rodgers gets flustered, he ain't the same guy.
Although he is better at running out and making plays.
Oh, yeah, he can extend and everything like that. But if I'm Matt LaFleur, I'm telling him, you throw the ball away.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with being Brett Favre. Just throw the ball away.
Yeah, talk about a Green Bay guy who Brett Favre overall, I think, made a lot of dumb decisions that cost him playoff games. But Rodgers, for all he's done in his NFL career, until he wins that second title, he's not going to be able to separate himself from this huge category. When you consider that Jim Plunkett, Eli Manning, these guys have two Super Bowl rings, and he doesn't. Maybe this is his best chance. Who knows? But either way, you get their home game at Lambeau Field, which I think they were kind of waiting for to get back to that. They got that now, and depending on whether San Francisco or Minnesota wins is where they will go play the NFC Championship game if they win.
It's certainly his best defense and his best running game he's had.
Yeah.
Oh, Aaron Jones is finally stable, but Ryan Grant was stable too, and then he got hurt.
Sure.
So we'll find out. But I do think Aaron Jones is his best since probably, oh my God, he didn't even have Ahmad Green, so he's probably the best running back Green Bay's had since Ahmad Green.
And so what do you think, too, in San Francisco and Minnesota?
I think San Francisco is going to dominate that football. I don't think it'll even be close.
All right, so we see San Francisco and Seattle in a...
That's going to be the funnest
renewal
game
of their rivalry.
Oh, my God.
We need a round three. We need a round three with those two teams.
And those games... All
we need is Michael Crabtree to come out of there.
And Sherman to switch uniforms.
Yeah.
That would be funny. That would be good. I love that. I love that little tussle. And these games, these NFC West divisional games, are always fantastic. I don't know what it is. The NFC East are normally blowouts. The North and South are pretty much whoever's supposed to win will win, and the NFC West is just topsy-turvy. Whoever does the wackier thing wins. But that's the best division in football. So I firmly believe that we'll get San Francisco and Seattle at that will be a great football game.
We need a round three between these two teams.
Yeah,
we need a round three.
I think so. That would definitely be fun to watch. But as we come back here, we're going to talk more about the AFC and round up our football talk into the 10 o'clock hour as we continue here on the Morning Boys.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. You're listening to the Morning Boys on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
You know, Evan, you're 2 for 2 in songs.
I got a good taste. I'm kidding.
I love it. Let's shoot the thrill.
Shoot the thrill.
We are back here on the Morning Boys on a Monday morning. Mark Kelly here with Tyler Harrison and Evan Mazza. Ryan Hickey is out. He got some personal business. He will be back on Thursday. Tyler, we were talking about the NFL playoffs before we went to break, and staying in the NFC is kind of all there is to really talk about today. I mean, the college football playoffs is next week.
Right.
Why it takes so long, I don't know. It's just kind of like the NBA playoffs.
The NBA playoffs are awful.
So The AFC. Okay, so we talked about the fact that you think it's San Francisco and Seattle in what we call round 3, I guess, of the rivalry here. New rivalry, different players involved. But in the AFC, you have for the first time since 2009, no New England in the second round. Okay, so you have Kansas City hosting. You have Baltimore hosting. Two teams that, for the most part of the recent history, if they were going to win a playoff game, they were going to win on the road. Right. Now they are the two teams that represent the AFC and be playing home games. Baltimore gets the Titans, which just came off beating a dynasty, or could they be the team that ended their dynasty? Well, now you get a different type of an offense, where you have Lamar Jackson and this new generation of running back, of quarterback coming in.
No, you hit it right on the head, running back.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But I think the Titans, you're looking at old school. Okay, we're going to line up, we're going to beat your ass, and we're going to run the ball right down your throat.
Win in the trenches.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the Ravens are the same. The Ravens are the same way. These two teams are very alike. It's going to come down to the quarterbacks, and I think Lamar Jackson has a huge advantage over that. Again, the game planning scheme. I think he has a huge advantage over right hand in terms of playmaking ability, his arm.
Playmaking ability, yes.
His arm too. I think Lamar. I think it's going to come down to Jackson versus Tannehill. I think Jackson has a big advantage on that one. I think the game will be tight in the first half, but I think Baltimore is going to pull away in the second half.
Well, I think that when you look at the two offenses and what Baltimore can do differently, okay, first team ever rushed for 3,000 and passed for 3,000. So
thanks for stealing Mark Ingram, by the way.
Well,
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I think they were.
Thank you for letting him walk.
We didn't let him walk. I don't know what happened. We didn't let him walk.
Another Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah.
From where?
Roll Tide.
Okay, there you go. But we mentioned the fact that they've been this historic offense, all right? And no team has ever done that. I think they were only separated by 71 yards, their rushing and passing yards, which is unbelievable how they're so consistent doing both things. And you've seen Lamar Jackson 3 times he threw for 5 touchdowns in a game this year, okay? Only one quarterback has done that more in one single season. That was Peyton Manning back in 2004. He threw 5 touchdowns 4 times in a game in a season, okay? So, and we're talking about Marino, I think himself only did it like 6 times in his career, throwing 5 touchdowns in a game. So Lamar Jackson can throw the ball when he has to. His ability to improvise off a broken play is so hard to defend against.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of what the game's going to come down to. If Tennessee is unable to control the clock, and really, I mean, you got to have like 1990 New York Giants, Otis Anderson, run with power type of controlling the clock.
And that's what they did against the Patriots. They controlled the clock. They kept Brady off the field. Their time possession was great. They ran the football effectively. And that's really the chance that Tennessee has in this game. You're going to have to run the ball effectively with Derrick Henry, keep that Ravens offense off the field, and set up play action, hope there's some big throws with Tannehill. But that's a tough Ravens secondary. That Ravens secondary is going to take away A.J. Brown. It's going to take away Corey Davis. It's going to take away John. It's going to take away all those guys. So it's really going to force Derrick Henry to pretty much win this game and for Tannehill to find a way to win in Baltimore in a tough, hostile environment. So it's going to be extremely tough for the Tennessee Titans. Tannehill. I won't say the Titans don't have a shot because they definitely do. They're built very Raven-like, but it's just going to be, it's too much to ask. I think it's a lot to ask for the Titans to win this one, and for Tannehill, really. I
think for a long time these two teams kind of mirrored each other.
Yes, for pretty much the last 2 decades they have.
I mean, remember the Eddie George Ray Lewis rivalry?
I agree.
Lewis knocked him out in the playoff game. Eddie George was a tough SOB.
Oh yeah,
he really was.
From?
Well, he went to Ohio State. Yeah.
I know. I'm not an Ohio State fan. I just wanted you to.
What do you think of that, by the way? Because I remember Ryan and I talked about before the playoff began that this was the Big Ten's moment. Like, they had to come out and win this year. If they didn't win this year, it would be like a black stain upon the Big Ten as far as them being mentioned with the SEC.
Right.
Or, and now you have LSU and Clemson. So they were unable to beat an ACC team. where you would obviously the Big Ten is better than the ACC. We're not even comparing the two conferences, okay?
Right.
But the best against the best, and Ohio State this year, there was no doubt Ohio State was one of the best teams, if not the best in the country.
Right. I thought they were second, right behind LSU.
Yeah, I mean
Right.
one in 1A or 1A and 1A,
Right.
okay? And now they don't even get to play them. LSU dominated Oklahoma. It wasn't even close. I would have loved to see LSU play Alabama again.
7 touchdowns by Joe
Yeah, I
Burrow
know.
in the first half.
I know.
Yeah.
My goodness.
I know, and if Alabama could have beaten Auburn that last game, it would have been LSU.
But Lincoln
Alabama
Riley is
again.
going to be the next coach of the Cowboys. That's what everyone
All
wants.
right. Well,
let him go. Let him
we'll
go.
see.
Let him
Okay.
go.
Okay.
Don't miss
Okay.
Jason Garrett. Let him go.
We'll see. But what do you think of that? Of the fact that you have that Ohio State and the Big Ten overall? Do you think that was a bad loss for them? That the Big Ten needed that win, or you still look at it? Well, this is really a good year. It doesn't really matter. Ryan's argument was it's only one game. You can't really base it off of one game. But I think overall, the Big Ten wants to be the best, or at least mentioned with the SEC. And until you win a championship, you
Right.
really can't.
Well, how I would view that is Ohio State should have beat Clemson. I think that they were the better team that entire game. And then Trevor Lawrence showed everyone why they think he's the best quarterback in the country. I don't think he is, but he definitely reminded everybody. But Clemson, all year long, kind of had a cakewalk, right?
They did. They were
So-
escorted to the national championship game.
I mean, they basically had not to, throw dirt on anyone's shoes, but the Patriots schedule. You know what I mean? The easy. Oh, well, everyone calls it the easy schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had just as many playoff teams on the schedule as anyone else, but I digress. The Big 12. I do think that LSU loss is bad.
Right.
That's
Well,
just
they
what I think.
yeah.
That to me means you're not even close
Right.
to the
And
SEC at all.
I don't think anyone really considered the Big 12 as a big-time conference. I mean, you
I think Oregon would have put up a better fight than Oklahoma did.
Right. Well, and the real team that should have been there wasn't because it was their own fault.
Right.
But,
I would have loved Bama to get
I know,
in.
that would
I
have
had
been
a
a
debate
great
on my
game.
show. I thought Bama should have got in anyway.
Right. Well, yeah, they didn't deserve to, but that would have been a great second matchup between those two teams. But it didn't happen. Oklahoma, you knew they had major weaknesses. They got exposed. 7 touchdowns in one half.
Right. Almost 500 yards.
Yeah. And so now you have a clear, okay, so LSU gets Clemson. Kind of what everybody wanted to see to begin with was it maybe a different SEC team than they would have hoped. Maybe they would have wanted to see Alabama play them again. But now we kind of have a new team in the SEC representing the conference.
Right.
But they're still the SEC. Like I think most people would say this was a down year when you look at the teams in the West. You had LSU and Alabama, and then you had a drop off. Even though Auburn played a lot of teams tough, the only team they beat was Alabama.
Right.
They lost to LSU, they lost to Florida. So when they came, they lost to Georgia. So they weren't able to beat.
I like Georgia. I don't think Georgia's as bad as people think.
No, I don't think they're bad. I just think that they haven't.
You want some breaking news?
Yep, here we go.
Mike McCarthy's the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yep.
Wow.
Per Ian Rappaport, Jane Slater, and Jay Glazer. Mike McCarthy, he's a Ian Rappaport.
I'm glad I could be here
Wow.
to break that for you.
Ian
All right,
Rappaport said that McCarthy informed the other teams. He talked about that he's out. He is going to be the Cowboy head coach. That I love this hire for the Cowboys. I love
they nailed it.
I love this hire.
They nailed it.
This was the perfect hire.
All right.
for the
So
Cowboys.
here's the answer.
I personally think he could be.
With Jerry Jones there.
No.
Here's the answer.
Jerry is an interesting factor because I
Interesting.
want to know.
Admit that Jerry Jones is the problem.
He is the problem. He's one of the big problems. Jerry Jones is one of the big problems. I want to see now that McCarthy is head coach, if they agreed upon things, maybe Jerry takes a few steps back or so. But that's not going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. But maybe
I don't think this was a Jerry Jones decision.
Stephen Jones.
This is a Stephen Jones decision.
Well, it gives us something we can get. We can take a little bit of break now, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Cowboys and whether or not this was the right hire, who else they could have gotten, who else they wanted to get, who else was being mentioned, and where they're going, the Urban Meyers, the Lincoln Rileys, as we continue here on the Morning Boys.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. You're listening to the Morning Boys on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Morning Boys here on a Monday morning. We have Tyler Harrison here with us. And are you ready for a new Cowboys team? Okay, which
It's a
Mike
new day.
McCarthy, it's a new day in Cowboys land. Mike McCarthy is now the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, just came over the wire. My biggest question is, what does this mean for the other teams? Okay, so you looked at this year. You had teams that were expected to do well. You had teams that were hoped to do well. The Browns were one team that was everyone's their like little toy, of Baker Mayfield, and it's so cute. And let's give it all the attention you want and get Odell Beckham and make trades and everything. And then they wind up 6-10, and Kitchens is gone. We had talked about,
rightfully so.
Kind of like what Dallas maybe needs the same thing, a little bit of discipline, a little bit, Garrett, for as good of a coach as he was as far as analytics, maybe he wasn't as good as a coach with dealing with guys on a man-to-man level. I don't know. I think that his future is going to be interesting too, because where does he wind up? Does he get another one of those jobs? Does he get the Giant job? Remember, it was rumored the Giants were interested in him way back during the regular season.
Right.
So, but the Cowboys, either way, you have McCarthy, who took over for the Packers in 2006 when it was still Brett Favre's team. 2007, they make it to the championship game, lose to the Giants. They won a Super Bowl in 2010 with a team that was just devastated by injuries. If you remember, I think like 11 of their opening day starters were on injured reserve. 2011, 15-1, wound up losing to the Giants. One of the handful of 15-1 teams ever. So McCarthy, it's in his resume to win.
Right.
So you think this was the right guy for the Cowboys?
I think he was the best coach available, and I think that Dallas needed something because, and this is where now, and I always said, I don't think Jason Garrett deserved to be fired. I don't think Jason Garrett did anything to be fired about. But I guess the writing was on the wall last offseason because they took play calling away from him. He never, ever meddled with Rod Marinelli's defense. That was his job. Jason Garrett worried about the offense. Then they said, well, Kellen Moore is the offense guy now. So we really just want you to stand there and clap. Okay, so I'll stand there and clap. Now, obviously, I'm being facetious. He had more duties than that. I'm just explaining that Jerry Jones.
That's a little bit of an exaggeration, or?
No, I really think that's all he did was stand there and clap.
Okay.
But you can't blame a coach for leading a team to 8 wins when he had no responsibilities. So, to me, the blame went to Jerry Jones. And I think Jerry Jones heard the outcry from Cowboys fans of, you better fix this. Now everything's on Dak. Dak's now going to be, because it's a quarterback league, which I think is completely insane that we still call it that. It's not. Defense still wins championships. Ryan Tannehill beat Tom Brady, and Kirk Cousins beat Drew Brees. It's not a quarterback-driven league anymore. But I will say this, Mike McCarthy to Dallas, depending on what Philly does, I think if both teams stay exactly the same, they should be the favorites to win the NFC East at least next year.
I guess so. You got Philly coming back. You figure I always
They got to come. Philly has to come back healthy.
I know, but I always thought Philly had something they were kind of laying in the weeds for, and that they were going to show it during the postseason run. They never did.
But again, you lose Carson Wentz
yeah,
early
but
in the game,
of course,
in the game.
that's true.
Just, you're put in a tough situation.
That is true.
There.
Playing with Carson Wentz, playing without him is a big part.
The Eagles need to get back healthy. The Eagles, you just got to get back healthy, and they'll be okay. For the Cowboys, God, this was the best move they could make. I wanted McCarthy on the Jets so bad last year. I thought he was perfect for Sam Darnold. They ended up with Adam Gase. They ended up with Adam Gase.
Yeah.
I thought he'd be a good fit for Cleveland. They ended up with Freddie Kitchens. Kitchens is gone. Gase, you could have made a case, should have gotten fired at the end of the year.
That was good.
But 6-2. But they finished 6-2. So
case for Gase.
Case for Gase. I didn't even realize. Wow, I didn't even realize I just.
No,
did that.
I know.
I
know. I
We
catch
had,
all that.
me,
catch.
me and Ryan had a whole thing set up. We had a song called "Adam Gase Should Be Fired" in a in the Billy Joel. We didn't start the fire type.
We didn't start the
thing.
fire.
So, but we never got to sing it because
My favorite Billy Joel song.
6-2. We actually went through "We Didn't Start the Fire," and I kind of explained what all the lyrics were in the song.
Right.
You know, because like a lot of it, Ryan's about 20 years younger than me.
Right.
So,
Right.
but yeah, that was one of my favorites.
But
That's a great song.
Yeah.
That's
Anyway,
a great song. They finished six. They finished
Long Island
6-2.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, Mets fan too. They finished 6-2 and everything like that. So it's like
Don't mention the Mets.
I will mention this. Dylan Betances.
But no, with Billy Joel's,
yeah.
every time Billy Joel sung a national anthem, whether it was a Ranger game, a Met game, they got their butts kicked.
Yeah?
Game 2 of the World Series against the Red Sox, who sings the national anthem?
Billy Joel.
Billy Joel. Doc Gooden gets knocked around. They go down 0-2 to the Red Sox. They want to win
Well,
the series anyway.
was Doc Gooden sober during that game is the question I'd ask.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think 9-3 was the final in that game.
Oh.
Just got their ass beat. But anyway, but yeah, anytime at the Garden singing for a Ranger
But the
game,
Mets
they
got
would
the
lose.
last laugh. That's all that
They
matters.
did. And the Red Sox.
we haven't had one in 33 years.
That was when I was 12.
So why'd you do a Boston accent to symbolize the New York Mets?
Me?
Yeah. 33 years.
Oh, that was my best Joe Beningo impression.
Oh.
That was bad, huh?
No, I just
I mean,
thought you were
that
doing
was-
a Boston guy.
Nah, I can do. I mean,
A Boston guy is more like
I
a park the
can't-
car type of guy.
Oh, that
like
was pretty
Brady,
good.
wicked
That's
foul.
good.
Brady
That's
is
good.
Brady
Hey,
could
no
throw the ball
ma!
wicked far.
No, ma!
My father was a Sox fan. Yeah, I dealt with that when I was in college.
Yeah?
I went to school up there.
I could tell.
Yeah,
You went into like second nature just now.
yeah. Well, I mean,
There's a lot I don't know about you, Mark Kelly.
yeah. Well, there's a lot to tell, but maybe that's obviously for another segment. We can go there if we want to. But dealing with the whole thing about now, is this enough for the Cowboys? Okay, you look at what did they really need? Okay, everything they had all this talent. Can McCarthy be the guy to kind of take it and make it to where they can make a postseason run, where they can win a Super Bowl? I mean, Cowboys have not been back to the Super Bowl since they beat the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Neil
in
O'Donnell,
95.
Larry Brown.
Yep, that's right. Who made Larry Brown the MVP of that game? That's still one of the worst MVPs ever. I mean, the guy basically gets knocked over by 2 passes that hit him right in the chest. And he's the MVP. And then he gets a golden deal with the Raiders who were giving,
Right, it was Oakland
who were
side.
just handing out contracts to Super Bowl MVPs back then, Desmond Howard and
Right.
Larry Brown, and just win, baby. So, but anyway, I think that the Cowboys now, there's no excuse. Like, if McCarthy comes in, a guy that's proven already won a Super Bowl, there weren't many of those guys out there. You look at like what Cleveland needs. I heard it be described as they need someone to come in and kind of clean up, like, the milk that's spilt on the floor. Like, you go away for a weekend with your kids out and you come back and the house is a mess. Like, that's what Cleveland is.
Right.
And so a guy like Jim Caldwell, I think, would be an excellent fit
Right.
for Cleveland. I still don't know, really. Jim Caldwell, you can go to the Lions. I mean, how bad are the Lions? The Lions have been around since 1930. They have never had consecutive seasons of 10 or more wins. And and he won with he won with Detroit. They made the
Right.
playoffs with him.
Right.
Okay.
I think he was wrongfully fired.
Stafford threw for 5,000 yards while he was there.
He was.
Okay.
His final year,
So-
they were 9-7. Final year.
Yeah. So he's just a guy that would really help a team like the Browns. A guy come in. He's won before. Won a Super Bowl with the Colts. Went to 2 Super Bowls with the Colts.
Right.
So I think it'd be perfect. But anyway. No,
If
he
wants
did
to
not win a
coach.
Super Bowl with the Colts. Dungy won that, didn't he?
Dungy
Which
won-
one? Oh,
Yeah.
06? Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
so
Caldwell was there in 09.
Oh,
when they lost
09,
to
right,
New
when they
Orleans.
lost the Saints. All right, my bad. Okay.
But no, that's still a fair point. But does Jim Caldwell want to coach at this point? He's got to
Right.
be in his 60s now.
I think he would be a good hire. I mean,
No,
it's
he
kind of
would be
like
a great hire if he wants to
Marv
coach.
Levy that second time around.
Right.
Like Marv Levy was, if you remember him before, became to the Bills. He was with the Chiefs, and no one really remembers Marv Levy as being a head coach of the Chiefs.
Right.
When you have Todd Blackledge and Bill Kenny as your quarterbacks, it's a little different.
Right.
That when the teams he had later on with Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas and the Bills
Andre
teams.
Reed,
Yeah,
Will
Andre
Smith.
Reed, Hall of Famers everywhere.
Right.
Who
But-
remembers Bill Belichick as the head coach of the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah,
I do.
Right. Well, that's something.
I also
interesting,
remember
too.
as head coach of the New York Jets.
Yeah,
For 10 seconds. For 10
one day.
seconds.
For one day.
Oh, you give him 10 seconds.
For one day.
He walked in at the presser and he walked out.
I remember that was the weirdest because that was my first year at ESPN, and I remember all of us kind of there and being like,
really?
Okay, we're getting set for Belichick to take over the Jets job, and so it was back then. I mean, we had the internet then, obviously, but there wasn't like the Twitter and Facebook back then, so no one saw it coming because we're all like, okay, well, it's kind of like just accepted that he was going to take the head coaching job because Parcells didn't want anymore. Why he quit Parcells at that point, I'll never understand. Coming off an 8-8 year where they had gotten off to an awful start. Testaverde gets hurt. They have Rick Myers, like everything kind of falling apart. Still good enough to get back to 8-8, and then you had Testaverde come back the next year. You had Keyshawn if you wanted him in position again to take over the AFC, and he quits. So now you're stuck with Belichick, who you didn't know was Belichick at the time.
Right.
You think you're just coming in. And the fact is that, when he took over, they was, 6-10 his first year or 5-11 his first year, okay? And then the second year, they lose to the Bengals to start the season. Mm-hmm. The Bengals in 2001 to start the season, and then Bledsoe gets hurt by
Mo Lewis.
By Mo Lewis, and then everything kind of falls apart. But I think then you saw him coming in, and the fact was that Belichick was going to take over the Jets for a long time. This is what was planned out. So when he got up there and he said, I resign, everybody was kind of like, what? Nobody saw this coming. He's typical Belichick, now typical Belichick. Back then, nobody really knew who he was. He was just kind of an odd guy who had like a head coaching job with Cleveland. And, we later found out that all the guys that he had with him in Cleveland, like Saban, wind up to have great coaching careers.
Ozzie Newsome.
Ozzie Newsome is single-handedly built the Ravens.
Right.
So Belichick comes in, and you expect him to take over the Jets. He doesn't. That whole day was messed up to begin with, but it turns out like typical Jets. Okay. Now the reason why, honestly, but the reason why he didn't take the job was because if you remember at the time, Leon Hess had died in May, and there was an unknown situation with their ownership.
Right.
And Hess promised Belichick certain things. So now that there wasn't, the Johnson brothers were rumored to be take over, but they didn't take over until late January. Right. So this was still early January. And I think the reason why he didn't stay is because of what happened to him. No. Well, that didn't help. But the fact that when he was in Cleveland and Modell moved the franchise, again, he had this whole feeling like, well, where is this franchise going? Nobody's in control. I have no idea what to expect. Let me just get out of here so I don't get blamed like I did in Cleveland.
Right.
I think kind of that was his instinct, and he was right. At least for him, it worked out pretty well, if you ask me.
Well,
but I think that coming into this situation here, now that we're 20 years later, and we're still head coaches being fired and taking over, and who's the problem? Who's the a guy like Garrett who had won 3 division titles? He's had success. Now he's gone. Where does he wind up? McCarthy comes in, having won a Super Bowl, one of the few guys out there that you could hire that has a resume of a Super Bowl.
Yeah, multiple playoff appearances, multiple championship game appearances.
Right.
Winning record.
So, I mean, is he the guy that's going to take this offense? First of all, is he a guy that really should take credit for the offense in Green Bay?
I
think he should. Aaron Rodgers, whatever, the ending was ugly and everything, and Rodgers apparently held this grudge on McCarthy that when McCarthy was the offensive coordinator in San Francisco, they passed on him for Alex Smith. Right. Aaron Rodgers was developed by Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy came in 2006. Rodgers was just going to his second year. He was able to fix some things with Aaron Rodgers and help make Rodgers, when he was ready to start in 2008, become the quarterback he became. I think Rodgers owes a lot to Mike McCarthy. And even Brett Favre. Brett Favre, we all thought was done. We all thought Favre was done in 05, 06. 07 comes around, he has a fantastic year.
Right.
So
he had a good first half with the Jets till they made him play with a bum shoulder.
Yeah. And then 2009 he goes to Minnesota and has a season of his lifetime.
I know, he throws 35 touchdowns and 4 picks.
Yeah. So I think McCarthy. I think this is perfect for Dak Prescott.
He couldn't throw a 10-yard out the last 3 games with the Jets. And
that was ugly. I actually went to that game against Buffalo where they won, and Sean Ellis got the strip sack fumble.
Yes, JP lost.
JP lost as the guy. I went to that game. That was a lot of fun.
Sean Ellis, right?
Yeah, Sean Ellis.
That was the only game they won. But they lost to
Seattle,
the
Oakland.
awful 49ers team, like with Singletary and
Denver.
Yeah, they lost. Denver just killed them. That was what, Jay Cutler?
Jay Cutler.
And Shanahan, I believe.
Yeah, Mike Shanahan.
How good were those Denver teams? I think back-to-back years they lost the division to the Chargers where they had like a 4-game lead with 4 games left.
Yeah.
I mean, Denver started 6-0 one year, did not make the playoffs.
That was 2009 with Kyle Orton.
Yeah.
Well,
That was
their
Josh
quarterback.
Josh McDaniels.
Right.
John,
But hey, Josh McDaniels won a playoff game with Tim Tebow.
Oh, God.
no, that was John Fox.
Yeah, that was John
was it
Fox.
John Fox?
That's
John
right.
Fox.
Right.
That was John
right.
Fox. That was
That's
John
right.
Fox.
But that Tebow
Adam
was.
Gase was there too.
There was
He
another,
was the wide receivers coach.
Yeah, but
He was still there.
There was another level for Tebow, like that, a heavenly level that just
Yes.
hasn't been touched. I think
Listen,
before.
I think me and Mike Guido are the only people on the planet that still say Tim Tebow should be a starting quarterback.
Yeah, I am not with you on that.
No,
but
he should.
He
I
wins
feel like
football games.
he could babysit my kid if I had one, or my
right.
dog, but
He
not.
can babysit my girlfriend if he wants. I trust him completely.
But not. I would not want him as my quarterback.
How about a running back or a fullback?
Well, I think there was something he could have done. Like I thought when the
Like a
Jets
flex.
got him, they were going to use him as like a Cordell Stewart, kind of like a
Right.
flash position.
Right.
And I think he could be best used for that, like he was at Florida before he became a starter.
Right.
Kind of put him in near goal line situations and just let him figure it out.
That jump
you know?
pass is still iconic to me.
But it never happened.
For
Now we could probably see him at City Field before we
Right,
see him anywhere
yeah,
else.
right. Speaking of that, hey Evan, how is Tim Tebow doing in AAA?
I don't really care. Listen, if he comes up, he comes up. I mean, I know he's coming from a finger injury, but I don't know.
Just think about that. He played football for how many years? Never got hurt. He signs with the Mets, and now all of a sudden he gets injured all the time.
Listen, it's what
It's,
happens.
it's part of the deal.
I guess so. Oh, you'll be a
gotta
Met, but
be
you'll
hunting
play
wi-
half your career. All
You
right,
got to be
fine.
hunting wild boar.
Oh my god.
That's
some
funny.
point.
That's freaking.
I didn't
absurd.
even read
Fitting.
I didn't even read the story. I just saw the headline. I was like,
Fitting.
no, I'm not reading that.
That's just.
I don't even need to read that story.
That's funny. Hey, you want to come back? No, I'm going to chase wild boar all over the place.
Even though that you guys gave me an egregious contract to begin with, and I
Right.
haven't played since what,
Two
June
and a
or
half
July
years.
of 2018.
2 years. He has
Ugh.
pretty much. Yeah, he played that one game against the Yankees.
The-
Hit a-
the
one
last-
game against the Yankees, hit a home run. That was
The
it.
last I heard of Cespedes, he hit a home run off of Alex Wood that still hasn't landed yet. That was in the divisional series though in 2015. So
Listen, I think if Yoenis Cespedes can come back for the Mets. And
yeah, but he's like 8 years older than he was in 2015. That's
Right.
like 5 years now. 5 years later now. It's
No,
like
no, I know,
that
but
girl
even if
who
he's-
was hot back then, and now she's not anymore.
But you still get that on your resume, no?
What?
That you still had the girl.
Yeah, but it
doesn't matter what
it's a
she
little
looks like
different
now.
though. Yeah, but it's a little different when it's a ball player that you're depending on his ability to take like more than any other player, or maybe like Koya Yastrzemski, like the '67 Red Sox, where he like hit 511 down the stretch of that year.
Right.
Like I've never seen a player take over and be the sole reason for an offense being successful like Cespedes was.
all I've ever
Right.
all I'm asked for Cespedes this year: 20 homers and 80 RBIs. That's it. Give me
Right,
20
but
homers and 80
honestly,
That's
here's
it.
the crazy part.
That's it.
Even if Yoenis Cespedes comes back and he's a fourth of the player he was, he's still a top 5 player on the Mets.
Yeah.
Outside of Pete Alonso, Yoenis Cespedes is the best option they have.
Yeah. And
I'll
we're
check
we're
it
delving into chaos here. I like it, though. We're kind of all over the place with different options here.
No, I'm
went
sorry.
from the NFL to baseball
Listen,
to.
that's my fault.
No,
I
no, it's not.
apologize.
It's
I'm
not.
all over
Wild
the place.
boars.
I like it. It's kind of like an all-out brawl here on the Morning Boys.
But Mike McCarthy, if to go back to McCarthy, I think this is perfect. I think for Dak Prescott, I think Dak, whether he gets franchise tagged or paid, I do think he will get a contract. For Dak Prescott, this is great. This is great because now you get a stable coach who's going to work with
If
you.
he stays.
Dak is going to stay. Who's going to work with you, who's got a winning resume, was able to help out Brett Favre at the end of his career, help Aaron Rodgers to become the quarterback he
See,
became.
you keep saying that. Why do you keep giving him credit for Brett Favre?
Because we all thought, a lot of us thought Favre was done around
we
04,
did.
05,
I give him
06.
that. I
A
give
lot
him
of us
that.
thought Favre was done.
Yeah.
Then
He
07
had a
comes out,
really
he's
good year in
fantastic.
2007.
No,
really
he did, but I just thought Brett Favre was just playing either hurt or just not
Not
feeling the yeah. I feel like, and here's the thing about Aaron Rodgers. Mike McCarthy deserves credit for Aaron Rodgers. You're right, but let's also not act like if Brett Favre told Mike McCarthy in 08, "Hey, I'm coming back." Okay, great. Aaron Rodgers wouldn't have played 08 either. He would have sat on the bench.
Favre did. Favre wanted to come back in 08, and the Packers and McCarthy,
I think they
Ted
said
Thompson,
goodbye.
all made that. They made up their mind. Remember, they drafted Aaron Rodgers in the first round of 05. They wanted him to replace Brett Favre. Favre said he wanted to come. Favre said he wanted to come back. They said, "Listen, we're all set on Aaron Rodgers. We're set. We want him as our guy."
That's how history will tell you that. But also, let's not act like he didn't have 3 or 4 weeks of, I don't know what I'm doing yet.
Yeah, but
and then Green Bay said, we can't wait for you.
I think they decided to move on after that year.
Right.
I think after they lost the championship game to the Giants, that was it. They've had it with his postseason picks.
That was a great pick, though.
They weren't going to win another Super Bowl.
Well, so
with
Favre
them,
retired. They figured, okay, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Time. All right,
Right.
here we go.
That's what I'm saying. You can't constantly come back and be like, oh, I want to come back. Eventually, the team's going to go, no, we have to go with the guy that's 15 years younger than you.
It's
All
like,
right,
like Ross Perot in the '96 election.
Oh,
I mean, I'm out. For a different time. But
Or Bernie Sanders now. Oh, I mean, I'm out. I'm Democrat. I'm Green Party. It's all right.
anyway, but I think that if we're talking about that, I don't.
I think I flustered you. I'm sorry.
No, politics is a whole different area. But yeah, I don't know. But I mean, what do you think?
I think he's a great fit.
Yeah.
I think McCarthy's a great fit. I think this is. And
right.
now,
So
now you get a coach with a winning resume like McCarthy, and you're able to. And Jerry Jones, I think for once we can agree or disagree whether Jerry made the. I think Jerry has the final say. No matter what, Jerry has the final say.
Jerry does have final say, but Stephen Jones probably said, I'm in charge of who we bring in to replace Jason Garrett.
Okay. Well, what does this mean for the Giants then? Who did they hire?
I think Jason Garrett has to now zone in on either Cleveland or New York. He has to. And to be quite honest with you, let's not act like the Jets are not going to go, oh, you know what, Adam Gase? Goodbye. Out of nowhere. I'm not sold Adam Gase has a job. I'm really not.
They already announced he was coming back like halfway through the year. Now I know they're liars, like general
They're the
managers
Jets.
are basically liars. Well,
They're the Jets.
Oh, well, they're like politicians, these general managers, okay,
Right.
or the owners. They're all politicians. They all lie. We're not looking. This guy is coming back, and then he's not. But I think for Gase, it'd kind of be hard with 6-2 in the second half to get rid of him now.
Which, by the way, is
even though they did fire McCagnon after letting him run a draft and after letting him spend the money.
Backwards.
Yeah,
Everything was backwards
didn't
about
make
that.
sense. So
right. And they don't want Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
Le'Veon Bell will be traded.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see.
Third and long.
We'll see.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, if you're the Jets, all right, and you got the Raiders number 12 pick and a number 18 pick, okay, or either 18 or 19, I don't know, but
The Jets have 2 picks?
no, they don't. The Raiders have 2 picks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Jets are 11. So would you trade the 11 pick and Le'Veon Bell
To Oakland?
to Oakland for their two first round picks?
If I'm the Jets, yes. If I'm Oakland, no.
No, why not?
Because I think Josh Jacobs is a top-end running back already. I don't think Le'Veon Bell and Derek Carr would mix. I think Derek Carr needs somebody down the field to help him. Derek Carr is a phenomenal quarterback.
The Raiders have a running back, Josh Jacobs. They're perfect.
Le'Veon Bell, but the Oakland Raiders are dumb enough to take on a contract like that for no reason at all. I would draft a wide receiver. Hopefully Judy falls that far. If not, then
He's not falling at 12. But they're going to get a good guy.
they're going to get.
Look, Judy, Ruggs, 1A plus. I mean, both of them are very good.
And then a corner. I would draft a corner and a receiver in the first round, and off you go.
We're gonna
That
take-
front seven of the Raiders wasn't bad last year.
We do have a call on the line. It's Errol.
Oh,
Errol, what do you got for us, buddy?
Well, it's pretty simple. I mean, I'm arguing on our group message about this Mike McCarthy move. And the problem is a lot of people on our network don't look at sources and do their investigation on what they say before they say it. So I'm going to take a shot at somebody who probably isn't listening, but I'm going to say it, and I'm not even going to mention his name because I know he knows who I'm talking about. And I'm sure you guys know who I'm talking about.
I'm right here.
But I will say one. Well, not you. It has nothing to do with you, Tyler. I'm talking about somebody who likes to text and likes to text message in a group message, but has absolutely no idea what he's talking about.
Mike
when he's
Guido
on the
hasn't said a
show.
word all day.
Well, it has nothing to do with Guido either. So here's my answer to this Mike McCarthy move. Mike McCarthy, over the years, has had 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. 2 great quarterbacks that fit very, very well in the West Coast offense. Okay? That's something somebody doesn't know. Now, Dak Prescott his game does not fit the West Coast offense. It doesn't. Now, if McCarthy transitions his offense into Dak Prescott's game, that's different. I can't see Mike McCarthy doing that because he comes from a structure of a West Coast offense. So, how is this make sense right now with the way it's implemented right now in Dallas, with Jerry Jones running the show? How does this make sense that Mike McCarthy, in every strategic kind of way, in the way they style their offense, how does this make sense that Mike McCarthy fits what the Dallas Cowboys are going to play? It doesn't make sense. Mike McCarthy fits in maybe a Carolina Panther structure. It does. The way, and I'll tell you why it fits in the Carolina structure, because I don't think Cam Newton's going to be there anymore. I think Cam Newton, he'll come back next year. He's never going to be the same. They're going to be looking for a quarterback that either can move inside and out of the pocket and throw the ball just as much as he can run, and they have weapons that you can use in a West Coast offense. Also, Atlanta is another team that would have fit perfectly. Well, obviously, Quinn is still going to be there, which makes absolutely no sense. Right. He would fit in that kind of offense. Dallas, it doesn't make sense. They strategically use the running game because their best player is a running back. In a West Coast offense, what do you do in West Coast offense? You use wide receivers. You need a bunch of not great wide receivers, good wide receivers that you can move, 4 or 5 of them. Do the Cowboys have that? They don't.
Well, they got
one receiver.
Amari Cooper's free agency is going to be big. That'll be interesting impact to look at. And I do think it'll be interesting to look at him for his free agency. Randall Cobb is still there. Michael Gallup is a nice young developing wide receiver. I think the Cowboys, obviously, I think tight end might be a need because obviously Jason Witten can't do it forever. Witten might retire again at the end of the year. I think the Cowboys could use another receiver, especially if they lose Amari Cooper. But in terms of McCarthy's influence and his offenses and his development of quarterbacks and what he could do for Dak, I think this is a perfect hire. Now again, system, everything matters, everything like that. They still have a top flight offensive line. Zeke is still Zeke. I think they'll be just. I think this is the best hire the Cowboys could possibly make. The best possible.
I disagree. I do not think this was the best hire they can make. Well, he was the best. He was the biggest name on the free agent market. No question that he was. And the development of Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was a great player coming out from Cal. He was going to be a great player. Some people said he should have been the number one pick in that draft, not Alex Smith. The fact that he fell all the way to the 20s made absolutely no sense.
Right.
Okay? That's one. 2, Aaron Rodgers is a different beast than Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott was a 4th-round draft pick. Aaron Rodgers was a 1st-round draft pick. Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest quarterbacks that ever played the game. Dak Prescott's not even going to be a Hall of Famer. Okay? Brett Favre is a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Okay? He's had 2 great quarterbacks. Now, you say Randall Cobb. Randall Cobb. Let's just go look at Randall Cobb's numbers this year and go look at his numbers the last 5 years. They're not good, okay? He's not the wide receiver he once was. He's also, I think, 29 or 30 years old. He's on the end of his career. Now, Michael Gallup looked good last year in certain aspects of the game and completely disappeared in games as well. So you can't depend on Michael Gallup, and you don't even know what you're going to do with Amari Cooper because now you're going to have to give Dak Prescott the $30 million that he wants. And Amari Cooper, I don't think that with what they need on that defense, in that secondary, there's no way they're going to be able to give Amari Cooper what he's going to be asking for. So I don't think this is a good move. He does not fit Jerry Jones' style of game. He doesn't.
And maybe that's a good maybe that's a good thing that he doesn't fit Jerry Jones' style. Maybe that's a good thing Jerry is actually going outside the box and taking someone that might not fit his era. After 9 years of Jason Garrett, quote unquote, fitting the Jerry Jones way, maybe it's great that he's going for a guy who doesn't necessarily fit Jerry Jones' way.
No, I listen. I hope for the Dallas Cowboys' sake it works out for them, but I think it's going to be a 3-year and done for McCarthy because I think he's going to have problems working with Jerry Jones. I really do. I think Jerry still has a lot to say, even if they give him somewhat of the reins of picking his players. I still think Jerry Jones is going to cause a lot of friction over there with Mike McCarthy, as well as he did with Bill Parcells. He doesn't work good with coaches that have a background in consistency.
But
so I don't.
He pretty much stayed out of the way with Parcells. I mean, Parcells had his 4 years there. I mean, Parcells wasn't going to stay very long, But I think that this is him showing that, you know what? If it is me, let me at least go after a guy that most people said I wouldn't hire. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't hire a guy like this.
Right.
Who?
So that makes so Mark, you're telling me that makes sense because he went
whether
after
whether it makes sense or not, I think is up to him and Cowboy fans. But I think that it's still a hire that you can't really say, well, this guy was better. Or as far as coaches are out there, I think this was the best that they could do as far as a resume guy.
Why wasn't Caldwell interviewed by the Cowboys?
Yeah, because Caldwell wasn't. You could. I don't know if discipline was as much thing as that Dallas needed. Maybe they needed a guy who was had a better offensive game plans. Maybe they needed guys that communicated better to his players. I don't know. Caldwell would have been. I thought Caldwell would have been a great guy. I think he's a great candidate for Cleveland. I think if they should hire him.
Here's the reason why. Here's why Jerry Jones hired Mike McCarthy, and this is the argument, and I'm going to argue it when I come on my show later, and I'm going to get off the phone because I'm listening to all these text messages on this group message, which it's ridiculous. And for you to come up with answers of opinion, you got to come up with sources. The source is right now, Jerry Jones picked the best guy available, the biggest, highest profile name that was available to make the Cowboy fans happy.
Right.
That's why he did it.
You're right.
He wanted to make the Cowboy fans happy. But the truth is, the Cowboy fans really going to be happy with Mike McCarthy? And my answer in every single source of what I'm looking at and the way the team is structured, no, he's not. He's not going to fit the Dallas Cowboy way.
That's fair.
So
we'll see. But as far as name recognition, this is what they wanted. This is what they got.
Yep, that's why I think it was. It was all about name recognition, and it had nothing to do with the style in the West Coast offense, which, by the way, I remember in the beginning of the season when they were talking about West Coast offenses, and I forget who said it, but some analyst said that Dak Prescott would not fit very well in the West Coast offense. So, because he's not an accurate thrower. So, I will go back, and I don't care what anybody says about development. He developed Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is a different beast than Dak Prescott. And that's all I'm going to say. And I like Dak.
I'm not asking, but I don't think we're asking Dak. We're not asking Dak to be Rodgers. We're asking McCarthy to make Dak into the best Dak Prescott he could be, the same way he was able to do it with Aaron Rodgers. We're not saying we want Dak to be Aaron Rodgers. We want, I think, the best thing for Jerry Jones, the best thing for Stephen Jones, the best thing for the Cowboys is to make Dak Prescott into the best Dak Prescott he can be. And out of all the guys on the market, out of all the coaches available, the best guy was Mike McCarthy to make that happen. Especially if you're going to pay Dak Prescott.
Let me ask you a question, Evan. Why was he the best guy for the job? It's the best guy available because of his name and his one accomplishment of winning a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. Is that why? Because to me, he was there for almost 12 years in Green Bay, and he won one Super Bowl with two of the top, probably 10 quarterbacks of all time. So, if you want to call that success, I don't know what is.
What's Sean Payton?
That's not successful.
So if Sean Payton becomes available tomorrow, you don't want to hire. You're not going to hire Sean Payton.
I'll tell you this about Drew Brees, and I'm not going to go off topic. Drew Brees is not a big team quarterback.
You're out of your mind.
Over and over.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
I'm not.
He's won a Super Bowl.
Crazy.
He's won a Super Bowl.
He won one Super Bowl.
I know, but
he won one Super Bowl.
But he still won one. Marino never won a Super Bowl. I mean, you could say that about a lot of guys.
First of all, and I'm so sick and tired of bringing back people bringing Dan Marino's name into conversation.
But he should be. Marino had a lot of playoff stinkers. He had he laid a lot of eggs in the playoffs. Marino.
Dan Marino played for the Saints with all those teams.
No, you forget. You forget that. Look, the Dolphins lost to the freaking Patriots in '85 when they should have went back to the Super Bowl and played the 49ers. And played the Bears, who they beat during the regular season. Mm-hmm. Their only loss, okay? He lost to Seattle in '83. Marino had some bad playoff games. It's his own damn fault. He didn't win a Super Bowl.
So did Drew Brees. And so did Drew Brees.
Yeah, exactly. But Brees won a Super Bowl. Marino didn't. It's
what? Does that make him a big game quarterback?
It makes him he's better anyway than Marino. But I think that
Drew Brees is better than Dan Marino?
Yeah.
Now you're
absolutely. It's not even close. It's not even close. You look at division titles and you look at everything else. But Breeze single-handedly turned around New Orleans. I don't know if Marino could do that.
So hold on. What do you mean he didn't do that? What do you mean he didn't do that?
Marino didn't win what did Marino do? What did Marino do in Miami that was so different than everybody else?
Didn't have anywhere close to the talent Drew Brees has had.
He didn't?
Over the
He didn't have Mark,
Drew Brees' best weapon is Michael
didn't
Thomas.
Didn't have Mark Duper. Didn't have Mark Clayton. Those guys are pretty good. 1,000-yard receivers.
Can I just finish up, and then you can yap your mouth all you want, Tyler, okay? You can say whatever you want about the wide receivers and tight ends that he had. It's about a team. Football is about a
But you just said that Drew Brees is the reason they lost. Not the defense giving up a 43-yard bomb to Kirk Cousins. That's why the Saints lost.
So hold on one second. So you're not going to give Kirk Cousins credit for what he did.
I did. If you would listen to when I first got here, I gave nothing but credit to Kirk Cousins.
He did.
You know what? I wasn't listening. You know why? Because I'm doing other things for the network. So don't bring me up and tell me about listening. I listen to enough, okay? And I listen to enough of the group messages on the crap that comes out of some of your guys' mouth. If you don't have a source, don't say anything, okay? Have a source. If you don't have a source, don't say nothing. And that's not going from you guys. It's going from the other guys that open their mouth and don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Right.
That's what I'm going to say.
All right,
that's what I'm going to say.
So get back to McCarthy with the Cowboys. All right. So where do you think Garrett winds up? Or getting away from that for a minute, where do you think Garrett winds up? Think he winds up with the Giants?
Where do I think Jason Garrett belongs? He belongs with the Jaguars. That's where I think he belongs. He's not going there because they decided to keep their coach for another year, which was absolutely ridiculous. How he still has a job. I don't think Jason Garrett's getting a job this year. I don't.
Okay.
I think Jason Garrett's going to be like Mike McCarthy. He's going to sit back. He's going to wait throughout the season, and there'll be a job that's going to open up next year that might be profiled for him. I think Jason Garrett needs to step away from football right now. Something that Adam Gase should have done and not take the Jets job, which was absolutely ridiculous. I think Jason Garrett needs a little bit of time. I think Jason Garrett's going to go to a team, and I don't know if he's going to win a Super Bowl. Don't quote me on that.
Right.
But I think he's going to be successful. I think he's going to be successful because he doesn't have Jerry Jones hovering over his head, telling him, well, he needs to play this guy and he needs to play that guy.
Right.
So where do I think the Giants are going to head for a coach? It seems like it's moving towards Matt Rule.
Yeah.
And I think Matt Rule will be the head coach of the New York Giants probably by the end of the week. I think you're going to hear some sources come out that Matt Rule, because everything, I have a source at the Giants right now, a writer that I'm going to try to get on the show probably this week or next week, who's been on our show before, years ago, about a year ago, and I reached out to him, and he's going to come on. He's one of the beat writers for the New York Giants. He told me that before the season was over, Matt Rule was a foregone conclusion that he was going to get the job, and I still think he was getting the job, and I believe that before the week or maybe mid next week, you're going to hear that Matt Rule sources are going to come out and say Matt Rule is going to get the job.
Okay.
So that's what I think is who's going to get the job for the Giants.
Do you know he has a huge buyout deal with Baylor? He has a $17 million buyout with Baylor. That's ridiculous. You think of why he got that much, because Baylor at the time needed. Yeah, Baylor was looking for a guy like him.
It was what he did with Temple is what people were so impressed.
Right.
Not what he did with Baylor. It was what he did with Temple. And that's what everybody keeps going back and forth with Matt Rule. And by the way, if somebody who likes to yap their mouths on our group messages, who wanted Mike McCarthy for the Giants, which, again, made no sense on putting Mike McCarthy. The thing about Mike McCarthy is you have to look, and you guys know this, Baltimore, for instance. Baltimore was so smart to keep Harbaugh because...
Right.
Evan.
I mean...
I know, it's true.
Go ahead. I think John Harbaugh is the heart of that organization,
Absolutely.
the heart of that team.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and what he does, how he runs his offenses and his defense, and he was a special teams coach. And everybody knows who his father was. Everybody knows who his brother is. Mike McCarthy fits in a style of offense where you have multiple weapons on multiple sides of the ball. And He doesn't have that with the Cowboys. Now, you say the offensive line, Evan, you say the offensive line is still an elite offensive line. Well, last year, they were ranked, I think, 12th or 13th. To me, that's not an elite offensive line. That's an offensive line that's aging. And to me, you could say whatever you want about what Zeke Elliott is, and I love Zeke. He's one of my favorite players in the league. The way he styles his game, look how many running backs he's had with the Green Bay Packers. Now, were they Zeke Elliott? No, they weren't. He had Eddie Lacy. He had Aaron Jones. He had all these different guys over the years. Were any of them really successful in his offense?
Ryan Grant was.
What, who?
Ryan Grant was very successful until he got hurt.
Ryan Grant was not successful. I'm talking about an elite running back.
And he's not.
They were not elite.
Now he has that guy. And in San Francisco, he also had Frank Gore when he was the offensive coordinator there.
Right.
Now he has that guy in Zeke Elliott, and Zeke's going to be great for him.
Eddie Lacy was a great running back.
Yeah,
he was a good running back.
He was.
For 2 years, he was a good running back. But
He
here's
was.
the thing, what happened with Eddie Lacy. His weight problem and the fact that Eddie Lacy did not fit the West Coast offense. Why? Because the West Coast offense
Eddie Lacy's
wasn't the offense that
Well
you're
done.
running up the gut. He was a power back. A running back. The style of a West Coast offense is using a Le'Veon Bell, using guys of like an Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones fits. When he became the starter of Mike McCarthy's offense, he fit Mike McCarthy's offense. That's why you saw the development of what he was becoming when they started putting him in the offense and using him more in the offense. This move doesn't make sense for the Cowboys. It really doesn't. I'm sorry. It doesn't. It's either the highly profiled name, absolutely. If you want a highly profiled guy to put there and say, he's a great coach, he's been successful, he's won Super Bowls, and all this other stuff, fine. You want to put him there and wave the flag that they hit on this guy, that's great. But I believe in 3 or 4 years down the road, Mike McCarthy is going to be leaving the Cowboys because it's not going to work. Because Jerry Jones is not going to work with him very, very well, and he's not going to get the players that he wants, and Dak does not fit his style of game. And I'm sorry, he's not an accurate thrower. So,
What time What time you on tonight?
6 p.m.
Okay.
6
All right.
p.m. tonight.
Well, I mean, I think most people would agree with you that they made the hire because it was a name guy, and this is who the fans wanted, and they got him.
And I hope for the Cowboy fans, they're very happy about this. And I hope you go back 4 years from now, after McCarthy walks away from this, and I believe that's going to happen. And you're going to go back and you're going to tell me, should we have really fired Jason Garrett? You know what I mean? And that's all I'm gonna say about that. Because everybody hates Jason Garrett, and I know Tyler, you don't. So I'm not gonna say you, but I know a lot of people hate Jason, and I think Jason Garrett needed his way out of there anyway. He didn't do the things that he needed to do there in the time that he was there. You're absolutely right. He should have been further. He should have gone further in the playoffs, no question. But is Jason Garrett a bad coach? Absolutely not. I just think that Mike McCarthy does not fit the style of players that he has, unless he completely changes this offense, which could happen. We'll see.
Real quick, there's a report that literally just came out about a half hour ago that Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy actually slept at Jerry Jones' house.
Yeah, and Tyler, I could tell you this. I'm sleeping. If I told you I was sleeping between you and your girlfriend last night, and I'm going to come in and tell you that I agree with you with Mike McCarthy when I don't agree with you with Mike McCarthy, and say that I was sleeping at your house and we agreed to it that particular time and don't agree to it on radio, that's two different stories. I don't care how many people can say that he was sleeping over his house. That doesn't mean anything. Bill Parcells, when he went over there to the Cowboys, everybody said Bill Parcells, he was offered the job and we got the job. He was going to run the show. He was going to take over and everything. How long did that work? It happened for 2
year and a half.
years.
No, he said he was there for 4 years.
He was there for 4 years.
Yeah.
It didn't work more than 2 years. It started coming out. There was backlash going on with the Cowboys in the locker room with Jerry Jones and Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells wrote a book after he retired and after he left the Cowboys and he took over Miami as the GM. He wrote a book after that. Go read the book, and go read the book of what he said about Jerry Jones. It is not structured, and that's my source
Right.
for all you guys out there on the group message. Go read the book that Bill Parcells said about Jerry Jones. Enough said on that, okay? It's not going to work.
Can one of you guys read it to me?
So, I'm sorry?
Tyler wants somebody to read it to him.
I can't read.
Well, if you want me to read you a bedtime story, I could do that the next time I sleep over.
I thought we weren't agreeing to that on radio.
All right. Thank you, Errol. I appreciate it, buddy. So we'll see you on your show tonight.
Thanks, guys.
Take care. All right. Well, we only got a couple more minutes here, but as we're about to finish here, Tyler, thank you for coming in and joining
anytime.
us. I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thank you, Evan, for
No
coming in
problem.
and helping out here.
To wrap this up, what are our final thoughts on Wild Card Weekend?
Okay. Well,
Mark.
I think since Wild Card Weekend is over now, we're going into the divisional round. I think if in the second round, I think the Ravens are going to win, and I think that the Chiefs are going to win. You'll probably have a Ravens, Kansas City championship game in the AFC. In the NFC, I think Minnesota's going to be able to beat San Francisco. They're going to surprise everybody. It's just one of those things. Like everyone thought that Cousins was not going to do it. He was this awful quarterback in the postseason. This is kind of like his coming out party. Like you had the Red Sox, like you had the Capitals, like you had the Blues, like all the things that weren't supposed to win did win. I think this could be it for them. So I see them going in there, but I also see Seattle winning too. So I think you're going to have a Minnesota-Seattle championship game, which will be interesting because then you'll have two road teams winning.
Right.
And the game will be at Seattle.
So then what's your Super Bowl? I can't let you not make your Super Bowl prediction then.
Well, I won't make it yet. Because I don't know. I got to see how the teams play in the divisional round before I do that.
I had Ravens Saints going to the playoffs. So
I don't like to get ahead of myself.
That's not blown up.
I had Saints Patriots, so I'm 0-2.
That's not
okay.
gone. I think my for Wild Card Weekend says I don't know if the Patriots dynasty is over. If Brady is back next year, then the dynasty at least stays on for one more year.
They lost 1 year. A dynasty does not end because of 1 year.
No, you're not wrong.
And I'm not taking a shot at you because I know you didn't say it, but there's a lot of people that think that, and it's asinine.
It's also, again, it's Brady's free agency, and if Brady is gone, then yes, it's over. But if he comes back, then I think it stays on for at least another year. I think the Bills are on the way up. I know the Bills just suffered a absolutely heartbreaking, gut-breaking loss, but I think they're on the way up.
Pains.
Growing
they needed
pains.
to have that.
They're on the way up.
They still got to beat the Patriots. They didn't this year.
That's true. And so same says for the Jets. They're on their way. Houston, big win for them.
Are the Jets on their way? They're the Jets.
I don't know.
They
They need offensive line.
As far as I'm
talent.
concerned, last I saw they played Patriots, people were seeing ghosts.
Right.
So they got a long way to go before you put them
You're
in a
talking
conversation.
like 5 years down the road.
Yeah, before you put them in any conversation.
They got to fix the offensive line, get some pass rush.
Exactly.
I
mean, we'll see what this guy. Look, Douglas has made his career on drafting people. So if he continues his way, then I think they're going to be fine.
I think for the Eagles, just get healthy. You just got to hope to get healthy. That's a team that can make a run next year. They just got to get healthy.
Well,
Not even that. They just got to do something to ensure that Wentz stays healthy. I don't care what. Carson Wentz would change that game somehow.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for you guys coming in. We will be back with you on Thursday when Ryan is back for the Thursday edition of the Morning Boys. Stay tuned for the Haystacks, which should be coming up next here on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. We will see you on Thursday.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.